Dane seemed like he had seen everything that was going to happen, but now there's a twist. But it doesn't make him any less determined to prove himself and pass the independent major. For some reason, Dane starts stomping his feet on the ground. We're not sure why he's doing it, but that's the next thing we see. Apparently, the purple-haired professor didn't think about the negatives either. It is almost as if she didn't intend to summon the werewolf because the look on her face smacks of horror and fear. It appears that our boy might be doing something also pretty unexpected because Delfinzo quickly cautions him, asking him what the hell he thinks he's doing. She tells him you stop it immediately, and warns him that IG would only get Edorak agitated. Sure enough, the massive werewolf gets pissed when he sees Dane pounding on the floor with his feet, so he charges at the young master with his teeth-filled mouth and a very terrifying scowl on his face. Our boy walks up to the crazy summoner as well and then looks him dead in the eye before asking him if all he needs to do is prove his summoning talent by any means. Hearing this, Edorak just responds coldly, asking him why he thought he could prove it by jumping into a pit of fire. Basically, this big canine monster considers himself a terrible fire and is somehow convinced that he will be the reason why our boy fails this exam. The head of the summoning department just gets scared when she hears this, and it makes her very worried for the young candidate trying to make it into the liberal arts major. While she's freaking out and panicking, our boy answers the huge werewolf with a very stern look on his face. It's clear that he's unfazed, so with this courage, he informs Edorak that there's no such thing as a pit of fire and then tells the big guy not to worry at all about this. Dane lifts his hand and prepares to take on the canine beast in front of him. The professor is definitely worried about it, but she can't really interfere, so all she can do is watch with a horrified expression plastered on her face. Edorak is definitely annoyed by the young contestant, so he starts growling uncomfortably. He's like a big dog that just wants to be let loose, but even after everything he does to scare the young master, Dane is completely unfazed. Our boy stares calmly at the ferocious beast as it glares at him. The red eyes glint with murderous intent for a while, but this intensity suddenly starts dropping by the second. The staring contest goes on for some time, but then all of a sudden, the werewolf's tail suddenly stops wagging and collapses to the ground. Once this happens, the massive beast stops growling at Dane and simply just bows to him like a pet dog. The huge canine monster pants like a house dog and moves closer to surrender. Seeing this, the young master stretches out his hand confidently and concludes that this is a very good behavior from the werewolf. As you can imagine, the professors are absolutely bewildered by what they just saw. And it's really hard to believe. Sure, they're dumbfounded by what just happened, but at least, they're also relieved that Dane somehow managed to calm the ferocious summon down. The creature lowers its head so our boy can pet it, so he does just that, and it makes him remember his own summon Genpu. He admits that this one is a lot bigger than Genpu, but the wolf monster isn't even paying attention to anything he's saying. The creature is just more concerned with enjoying the head rubs and taking a nap right on the spot. The young master just keeps petting the beast so he can put it to sleep, and while he's at it, Professor Delfinzo walks up to him. The purple-haired lady finds the whole thing impossible because she can't believe that the evil Edorak can be so obedient to anyone at all. As if calming the beast wasn't shocking enough, Dane does something else that leaves the summoning department head absolutely speechless. She's still walking up to him when she notices that there's a magical thread attached to Edorak. Her eyes widen in shock as she tries to be sure that her mind isn't playing tricks on her. The professor is taken aback by the glowing thread attached to the monster like a leash. Judging by the light color of the thread, she can tell that it is not only going to make the beast obedient all of a sudden, but it's also going to erase Edorak's hostility completely. By the time Dane is done with this wild beast, there's not going to be a lot of aggression in the creature anymore because he'd have sucked out all the hostility in it, turning it into a domestic house dog. The other professors watch the whole thing from their table, and it's almost like a dream to them. The head of the spearmanship department is so stunned by everything that she just saw that she had to stand up from her seat to make some sense out of it. She looks so gobsmacked by the fact that Dane somehow managed to tame the beast, so she wonders if the boy is using innate empathy. On the other hand, Drabano just lets out a crazy laugh, refusing to believe any of it even though he's witnessing everything with his own eyes. Remember those two men that were summoned by Delfinzo the first time? Well, it turns out that they weren't unconscious. They're wide awake but probably feel like they're still in a dream because they just witnessed the impossible. Everyone else is still overwhelmed by what the young master just did, but the summoning department head feels that she needs to get closer so she can analyze that magic thread. She wonders if it's possible to create a similar magic thread and connect it to herself. Apparently, she has intentions of taking the wild beast and making it her pet. The professor in glasses feels that this might be the best way to fight against the summon because there are no traces. As far as the professor is concerned, this magic thread that the young master used is an ability that surpasses even her, who has long been praised by her teacher since she was a little girl. Even meeting someone with talent like this is extremely rare, so the professor really looks forward to the future of the prodigy. After taming the uncontrollable beast that everyone else was terrified of, our boy walks up to the purple-haired professor and she immediately informs him that his ability has been confirmed. They were probably looking down on him before, but after seeing what he just managed, the summoning department head acknowledges him. She gives him a nod of approval and commends him for having strong courage and calm judgment, as well as solid fundamentals. Delfinzo is so impressed that she can't even pretend to keep him in suspense, so he quickly realizes that he passed this first round without a doubt. The moment he says this, the other department heads seated at the table agree with him at the same exact time. They're all in awe of the young man standing there, and they can't even act all tough and mysterious anymore, so the young master just smiles in satisfaction, knowing that he's one step closer to getting accepted into the liberal arts major. With this in mind, he smiles at the teachers and then thanks them. The scene shifts once again, and this time around, the story continues later that night. We see that our boy is done with that phase of the exam, and of course, Layla is extremely curious about all the details. She's surprised when he informs her that the whole thing was over in 30 minutes, and she almost doesn't believe him. She figures that this means he must be a senior, but he doesn't think so. Besides, he's aware that she was also first place in the swordsmanship department. Unfortunately, that's not really enough for her because Dane seems to be doing wonders already. The girl feels intimidated and isn't really happy with her performance so far, so she's pretty sad, and our boy just cheers her up. He reminds her that she threw a banquet to celebrate their passing, hoping that the thought of food would make her feel better. Unfortunately, Layla prefers to brood and wallow in self-pity, so she tells him that she doesn't have an appetite anymore. She tells him that he should go ahead and eat more. It's really clear that she doesn't feel good at all. The girl looks like she's about to start crying because the difference in talent between her and Dane is just so much now. She can't even describe the feeling, but she certainly knows that she doesn't like it, so she just turns around with her head down and walks away from him. Our boy senses that she's not feeling okay, so he calls out to her, hoping he can help her feel better, but just when he tries to follow her, the Duke Thermion himself comes out. The old man stands in the way and tells Dane that Layla wants to be alone right now. He suggests that the young master let her be, and when Dane tries to protest, the Duke just assures him that his daughter will be fine. The Hexaclass Knight tells our boy not to worry too much about Layla and then asks the young talent if he's contacted his father yet. The Duke chuckles at the thought, knowing that his friend Arkensagers must be very proud that his son passed the entrance exam into the Imperial Academy. In response, our boy reveals that he's already informed his old man of everything. He admits that everyone was very happy when he broke the news to them, and the Duke reveals that everyone in the mansion was surprised too, considering the fact that he got accepted into the liberal arts major. Now that the exams are over, Duke Thermion encourages Dane to take a good rest and wait for the admissions. In response, our boy just thanked the old man for his concern, and after having this chat, the Hexaclass Knight changed the topic. He asks the young master if he has thought about the items he wants to request from the blacksmith at the Thermion Forge. Hearing this, our boy reveals that he thought about a sword but admits that he hasn't made any plans yet. In response, the old man feels that there might be something wrong, so he asks what's up, and Dane explains that the reason he hasn't made any plans is because his body is still in the process of maturing. As a result, he doesn't know what kind of sword he should even make. Even though this is the case right now, the young master definitely wants to think about it, so he feels that this is a good opportunity for that. Duke Thermion lets out a small laugh in response and assures Dane that there's no rush. He encourages the boy to make his decision in his own time, and the two men share a wholesome moment together. The conversation is interrupted when the butler suddenly arrives. The man suggests that Duke Thermion would probably go see his wife now, and the Hexaclass Knight claims that he will. He knows that he should go be with his sick wife right now, so he does just that and leaves Dane Sagers outside. As the Duke goes inside with the butler, our boy just watches him and figures that the Duchess's illness still hasn't fully recovered yet. That's pretty sad, and our boy can't help but feel sorry for the family. As if she was reading his mind, Layla suddenly appears again, telling him that the symptoms of her mother's illness haven't gotten worse. They're thankful for this, but it doesn't change the fact that the poor Duchess hasn't gotten any better either. Layla reveals that this is how it's been for several years now, and Dane just looks at her with so much sympathy laced on his face. He feels so sorry for the poor girl and her family who have had to deal with this for years now. Dane thinks about how he's never even seen a member of his family sick, so he knows that it's a feeling he cannot understand. This whole thing puts him in a pretty sad mood, and if he can feel this way, it makes him wonder how Layla must be feeling right now. As such, he decides that it's time to go comfort his dear friend. The scene shifts once again, and the next time we see our boy, it's 2 days later. The current location is the Imperial Academy, and different people are walking and chatting in the school. A while later, the newly admitted students are arranged and attend their first assembly in the courtyard. They're addressed by the principal of the academy, who goes by the name Ackwold Hamet. He claims that it's a pleasure to finally meet the new students of the Royal Academy and commends them for overcoming the fierce competition this year. There were definitely a lot of applicants, but these are the few who made it to the end, and the fact that they were able to do this makes him really happy to see them in his school. It makes him proud, and so he feels that the future of the Empire is very bright as well. We see all the students lined up on the assembly ground, all wearing their new uniforms. The principal assures them that every one of them standing there is a top talent of the Empire. As far as he's concerned, they're all treasures, so it gives him great pride to have them in his school. From what he heard, he can confirm that there are many outstanding talents, especially among the new students that got enrolled this year. Most of the newly admitted students smile with pride as they hear the principal speak about them. They're really honored and very proud of themselves for making it this far. The head of the Royal Academy continues his speech, and that's when he reveals that one of the new students even passed the liberal arts major. The principal reveals that only 2 people have ever managed this feat in the last 100 years, which is absolutely crazy. The old man confirms that this student is the 2nd person to do it ever and informs the rest at the assembly that this person has been approved by 3 department heads from the spearmanship, magic, and summoning departments. As you can imagine, such news is a really big deal for anyone in the Imperial Academy. The other newly admitted students are surprised to hear that one of them actually got accepted into the liberal arts major. It's absolutely unbelievable, and it makes them all wonder what kind of ability this mysterious student has. While they're all wonderful, the principal continues his announcement and confidently informs them that this new genius is set to become the freshman representative. That being said, the head of the school reveals that this genius is valedictorian Dane Saugers, while the hero in question just stands still, showing no emotion at all. The story continues with our boy activating all the traps in the room to take them all at the same time. He dashes across the room, dodging all the projectiles launched at him, and still somehow manages to avoid getting hit by the poles that suddenly shoot out from the ground all the way to the ceiling. He beats these 2 waves of traps and then pauses to scan the area while the students who set up the hazing just watch in awe. They're not too surprised because it's just the kind of performance they expect from House Saugers. One of them reveals that he heard Dane's older sisters were treated badly at their initiation ceremonies. However, while the other students are busy talking about all that stuff, the ginger-haired mastermind suddenly freaks out because it becomes clear that Dane seems to know what the traps are and where they'll come out of. This is pretty frustrating, as you can imagine, because Arnold spent so much effort to hide the traps but Dane found them so easily. The master nerd is pretty disappointed for sure, but at the same time, he feels that it's way too early to give up. He refuses to let the new kid ruin his mood and decides to remain positive, feeling that there's no way Dane will be able to avoid the last trap he planted. Arnold says this with so much confidence that it makes the other students curious, and one of the girls asks him what the last trap actually is. Even though they're supposed to be on the same team, he refuses to tell her what it is and decides to be all mysterious about it, laughing and claiming that she'll know once she sees it. In that moment, the scene shifts back to the den of traps where we see a massive dragon appear out of thin air. Besides the massive red lizard monster, there's another giant horned beast at the back, so when Dane comes face to face with these abominations, he realizes that the final hurdle in this hazing is to fight against these summons. At first glance, our boy can already tell that the mastermind of this stunt prepared quite powerful summons for the task, but then after taking a closer look, he realizes that something isn't right. Dane notices something weird about the dragon's feet and tail, which immediately makes him realize that these monstrosities aren't actually here. It turns out that the summons are just illusions set up to terrify him, but now that he knows that, he has the upper hand. It makes sense to him because it's so noisy, and yet he could only see 2 powerful summons in the room with him. Even though they're not real monsters, Dane admits that it's still a clever trick because an ordinary student would have fled straight away after seeing them. Thankfully, there's nothing ordinary about Dane Saugers, so as the illusions charge at him, he just remains unfazed and waits for the attack, knowing that there's no need to dodge or run away. Rather, he decides that all he has to do is adjust the flow of mana and make it so that the illusions can't fulfill their purpose. With this plan in mind, he gets right to it, and when the hazing master sees what's going on, he begins to panic. Arnold is so confused when he realizes that Dane isn't running away and is actually quite relaxed instead. Some of the other students notice this too and immediately figure that he's planning to do something because they see that he's gathering mana too. As soon as Arnold hears this, his jaw drops in shock because he can't believe that the white-haired newbie managed to detect his illusion in such a short amount of time. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that anyone can manage that, so he refuses to accept defeat. Unfortunately, his colleagues are already convinced that it's game over, so they make it clear to the ginger-haired nerd. They're absolutely right about this too, because our boy suddenly unleashes the ball of mana that he gathered and shoots it at the illusions. The bright light from the blast fills the room, and the fake monsters can only screech as they get wiped away by Dane's powerful strike. After the dust settles, our boy just looks at the fake summons with a smug look on his face, thinking about how boring the whole trap was. Now that he's ruined the hazing for the bullies, he figures that it's time to go find the creator of the illusions. Just then, we see the older students running out of a room, looking absolutely terrified of something. They're currently running from the huge wolf summon called Eterarch, and they have no idea why the monster is here. Not knowing what else to do, they yell at Arnold to do something since he was the mastermind of the whole plan after all. Unfortunately, the ginger-haired nerd is just as scared and confused as the rest, so he makes a run for it too, claiming that he doesn't know what to do either. This comes as a shock to the other students because he was literally the one who prepared the monster that's now attacking them for some reason. The students quickly realize that they can't escape the giant beast, so they give up at the dead end and wait to see what happens to them. Just when it looks like they're about to be executed by the terrifying summon, our boy Dane reveals himself, feeling really smug that he figured out where they were hiding. The students are shocked when they see him, and Arnold almost can't believe that the freshman just made a fool of him. Annoyed by the current situation, he asks Dane to do something about the giant wolf summon threatening their lives if he's the one responsible for it, claiming that they'll apologize for messing with him if that's what it would take to get the creature away from them. Hearing this, our boy decides to spare them and uses his summoning talent to send the Eterarch away. Just like he did with the fake summons, he gets rid of the giant wolf creature in the blink of an eye, leaving the students pretty dumbfounded. They're shocked at how quickly it disappeared and begin to feel that Dane used an illusion to make them shit their pants. After showing them who the boss is, our boy finally speaks up and makes it clear to them that they failed at the initiation ceremony. Seeing that they were absolutely humiliated by the new guy, the students decide to give Dane a proper welcome. One of them walks up to our boy and introduces himself as Dragan Valentine, who happens to be a fifth-year alchemy student at the school. He reveals that he's the only direct descendant of Marquess Valentine. At first, you'd assume that this nerd on glasses is just trying to welcome Dane into the academy, but he begins to act like a creep all of a sudden, talking about how well-built and handsome our boy is. Dragan makes this observation and admits that it's only natural for Dane to look this good since both his sisters are very beautiful. He eventually takes a break from all the weird talk and shakes Dane's hand. Our boy returns the gesture, but of course, he's a little creeped out by the guy because he doesn't get what he's yapping about. Unfortunately, Dragan isn't done tooting our boy's horn just yet. He starts praising Dane, talking about how amazing his ability to dodge traps is. He reveals that he heard about our boy entering the autonomous department and begins to wonder if that's why the initiation ceremony failed. This talkative kid just keeps blabbering on, revealing that Arnold was very disappointed by the failed hazing. As you can imagine, the ginger-haired boy doesn't appreciate his name being mentioned because he's already faced enough embarrassment for one day. However, Dragan doesn't seem to care about his feelings, so he just keeps talking, telling Dane how Arnold is the heir of the Cullard house, who are famous for being hunters. He even goes on to tell our boy that Arnold was the one who created all those traps. Hearing this, a cheeky grin creeps up on our boy's face because he's quite intrigued by the fact that one student managed to install all those traps. After practically telling Dane all about Arnold's life history, Dragan finally figures that it's time to call the others over so that they can introduce themselves to the freshmen as well. For some of them, this is a good idea, so they hurry over, but Arnold is particularly reluctant to do so. The blonde girl in the group is Priscilla, and she's a fourth-year theology student. Dragan claims that it's best not to bother her because she dreams of becoming a cleric, but while he's still talking, she shoves him aside to speak directly with Dane. Apparently, Priscilla is a very straightforward young lady, which explains why she immediately introduces herself as kind and beautiful. She reveals that she's the abandoned child of House Nerial and starts talking about how one can't even dream of marriage the moment they enter the theology department. She says this with a straight face, but Dane finds it a little amusing, so he laughs a little while stating that it's a pleasure to meet her. They shake hands, but in that moment, the blondie is immediately overwhelmed by the power that she feels coming from the freshman. She begins to wonder what the hell Dane actually is because she can't even comprehend why his mana is so dense. She can't even hide what she's feeling, so she blurts out what's on her mind, asking if this amount of mana is something that someone their age can even possess. Dragan is a little baffled by her reaction because he also shook Dane's hand a few seconds ago and he didn't feel anything crazy. While he's still wondering why Priscilla is so overwhelmed, the girl remains mind-blown by the ridiculous amount of mana Dane possesses. Dragan is very curious all of a sudden, wondering if the power is really that amazing, but she just ignores him and keeps drooling over our boy. As you can imagine, Arnold is pretty pissed when he sees what's going on. He wonders why she's praising him so much just because his mana is a bit denser than usual. At this point, the other students in the gang are also eager to experience what's so special about Dane. With this in mind, one of them pushes Priscilla aside and goes to introduce himself. The redhead is actually Shaul Hasbro, a second-year martial arts student. He's also a bit arrogant too because he immediately starts talking about how he's different from the disgusting pests in the physical beauty club and how he doesn't want to be compared to them. Hearing this, our boy immediately recalls the obsessed gym bros that were trying to get him to join their club earlier. Hasbro clearly doesn't like them, but he admits that muscles are pretty important. However, he explains how martial arts isn't just about growing showy muscles. That being said, he tells Dane to let him know if he's interested, promising to tell him all about true martial arts. After this little chat, our boy realizes that there's only one person in the room who hasn't approached him yet, and of course, it's none other than Arnold. The others notice this, so they call out to him, informing him that it's his turn to introduce himself, but this guy literally turns his back to them and refuses to say anything. They're all pretty smart here, so they can tell that he's still sulking because his traps didn't work, and of course, they tease him for it, claiming that it's really petty of him. Apparently, the mockery gets to him and sets him straight, so he turns around all of a sudden and introduces himself to Dane. They shake hands, and our boy can instantly tell that the guy is still upset because all the traps he prepared were destroyed. This makes him feel a little sorry for Arnold, so he figures that it wouldn't be such a bad idea to praise him a little. With this in mind, Dane admits that the traps were pretty good, and commends Arnold for knowing a lot about trap mechanics and how to set triggers. He goes on to point out how they were a bit noticeable and suggests that it must have been a paying problem. Rather than being flattered, the orange-haired brat just feels attacked, so he snaps at Dane, but the young master calmly advises him to use the paints better next time. He claims that his traps would be less noticeable at this level of brightness if he takes the advice. Hearing this, Arnold calms down all of a sudden because Dane actually just made a lot of sense. Now that they're on the same page, our boy assures him that the traps were well made other than the paint issue, stating that anyone else would have fallen for them. The other students are just bewildered by what they just witnessed because none of them ever imagined that the freshman would be the one to teach Arnold something about traps. The colored boy is literally a hunter and trap maker by birth, so the fact that Dane could teach him about that makes them conclude that the freshman is really an amazing person. At this point, Shawl Hasbro figures that it's time to end the introduction, so he offers to show Dane his new room. They all follow the redhead, and as our boy walks behind, he realizes that these guys actually seem fun. Even though they almost started out as jerks, he now has a good feeling about them and thinks that he might just have gained some really good friends. He takes a look at them and sees Arnold bragging about his traps while the rest try to humble him, and this makes our boy pretty confident that his stay at this school is going to get a lot more interesting. The scene shifts, and the next thing we see Layla finding out that he's taking 6 classes related to his majors this semester. In response, he simply explains that he has 3 majors and that he needs to take 2 courses for each. Layla is a little concerned about this because he still has liberal arts classes to take. She wonders if he can really do it all because he might not even have time to sleep with such a choked up schedule. Usually, first years take 4 classes at most, so she makes him aware of this and tells him to think carefully about what he wants to do. Layla reminds him that he can still cancel some of the classes after the first class, but our boy just smiles smugly in response, assuring her that it's going to be alright. After all, this is why he applied for 2 liberal arts classes and even added military science. Hearing this, Layla is a little annoyed because he's kinda showing off at this point. She commends him for his determination either way because military science scares her, especially since she lost a lot of points in the first exam due to military science. But then again, she shouldn't be too hard on herself because it's a really difficult subject. Layla isn't too surprised that he is taking such a stressful course because it's just the kind of thing you expect from the top student. Unfortunately, their little chat has to end now because she has to go to her liberal arts class. She figures that they'll catch up in swordsmanship class later, but before she can run off, Dane curiously asks what class she's taking in the liberal arts department. In response, she proudly shows him her book and reveals that she's in the understanding cosmetics and skin class, which our boy isn't shocked by since she's a girl after all. At this point, it's time for them to really part ways, so Dane tells her that they'll see each other later. The scene shifts and we catch up with our boy who just made a shocking appearance at one of the liberal arts classes. They're really taken aback when they see Dane Saugers taking one of their classes, and all they can do is wonder what he's doing there. Seeing that he's the top student in the school, most of the other kids are really nervous around him, so they don't even know if they should try talking to him. They don't really know what the young master is like. All they know is that he's from a county, so they don't think that he'll be cold and distant. The students keep talking about him, but he can literally hear everything they're saying, so it's a little awkward for him. With nothing else for him to do, he quietly opens his book on Introduction to Military Science to keep reading. As he flips through the pages, he remembers what he read the previous day and confirms that there were some things he already knew and some things that were directly at odds with reality. I mean, he should know since he was one of the most skilled soldiers in his past life. Besides that, he's also not surprised by the discrepancies because if theory and practice always match, no countries would lose in war. Dane feels that the reason military science is still taught just shows how important theory and the basics are. His train of thought is interrupted when the professor suddenly walks into the class. One of the students announces this, and before the other students can even process it, the white-haired man yells at the noisy students to settle down immediately. He makes his way to the front of the class and slams his hand on the table to get everyone's attention before greeting all the students. He introduces himself as Francisco Gavious and informs them that he will be their military theory professor. Judging by the stern look on the man's face, it's pretty obvious that he's been in more than just a few wars. He tells the students to refer to him as Professor Gavious and then decides to take attendance before starting the class. While the man is still talking, Dane's thoughts drift off. At a glance, he can tell that the professor is someone who has spent quite a bit of time on the battlefield. This is just the kind of teacher he was hoping for, so a little smile appears on his face as he's already looking forward to this class. Professor Gavious bluntly tells the class that nothing will work on the battlefield no matter how much they study military theory. That's a really discouraging thing to tell students in the first class, but I guess the man is just being brutally honest with them. He states that soldiers have their own will and that commanders always have to balance the lives of their soldiers against victory. Despite saying all of this, he also makes it clear that theory is still pretty important. But only when they have the theory as their foundation, because that's the only time they can truly understand the field, correct their mistakes, and see the true usefulness of military science on the battlefield. After stating all of this, the professor thinks aloud, wondering how many people in this lecture will grow into elites in the future, and then asks the students what they think is the most important thing in war. Of course, none of these noobs have any idea what the answer is, and even if they wanted to take a guess, they're probably too scared of the scar-faced man to raise their hands, so they just sit there and mope. However, there's one of them who seems to have the answer, and he doesn't even hesitate to raise his hand. Professor Gavious almost looks shocked to see that there's a hand up, but he doesn't show it too much and then tells the students to speak. Sure enough, the one with his hand up is none other than our boy, Dane Saugers, who seems to be so interested in this class already. Without even thinking twice, our boy reveals that the most important thing in war is actually the supply lines. The professor and the rest of the class are surprised by this response because it's actually correct. Gavious claims that this is an excellent answer before elaborating on it. He reveals that victory and triumphant returns from battle are only possible if supply lines are secured. The man is still really blown away by the fact that the correct answer came from the first student to try, because it wasn't exactly an easy question either. Eager to test this bold white-haired boy some more, the professor asks him if he knows the 3 most important things regarding supply lines. Without even wasting a second, Dane begins listing the answers. He reveals that the first is strict military management. He explains that the supply line from the capital to the front lines is not only stretched out over a long distance, but that the system involved is also long and complicated. Because of this, if even one person in the process is of a different mind, corruption can easily occur, which will likely lead to supply shortages. Sure, all of this basically sounds like gibberish to the other students in the class because they have very little knowledge about war. However, our boy is extremely vast on the topic, especially because of his experience. In his previous life, most supply problems occurred because of people in the middle who were embezzling when the supplies were properly packaged and delivered. After listening to this very detailed answer, Professor Gavious immediately confirms that it's correct and then asks our boy to keep going. At this point, our boy is on a roll, and since the teacher is deeply engrossed, he decides to just keep going. Dane explains that the second most important factor is the standardization of supplies. He elaborates on the answer, stating that if the specific actions of the supplies, such as quantity, weight, length, and width, are the same, then it has the advantage of being easy to mass produce. Our boy claims that this is of great help in rapid supply, and at the same time, it does not cause confusion in the front-line units or reduce their combat effectiveness. By the time Dane is done talking about the second factor, all his classmates are pretty overwhelmed. They begin to wonder what is up with him because some of the answers he's giving weren't even in the books they read for the course. Even the professor is astounded by Dane's vast knowledge on war. His mind is blown, but he does his best to make sure that nobody notices, so he just confirms that the answer is correct and then asks Dane to tell him what the last most important factor is. Once again, the answer rolls off our boy's tongue as he reveals that it's local procurement. Just like he did before, he immediately starts elaborating the answer, explaining that the longer a war drags on, and the more the first 2 factors are violated, then the quality of supplies will continue to deteriorate even more. Dane states that local procurement can enable soldiers to achieve at least minimal self-sufficiency. He admits that the quantity and quality might not be the best, but at least it would be more than enough as an emergency food supply. After giving his answers, a confident smile creeps up on his face because he experienced all these things firsthand in his previous life. He's not talking from the perspective of a student who crammed all of these from a book, but from a soldier who has seen and felt all of these things on the battlefield. The entire class becomes as quiet as a graveyard by the time Dane is done talking because all his classmates still have their jaws dropped to the floor. They can't believe that their colleague knows so much already, so they're pretty dumbfounded. As for the professor, well, he's most likely in love with Dane already. He confirms that our boy's answer was absolutely amazing, and as you can imagine, he's extremely curious about the student. Professor Gavious asks Dane what year he is in, and our boy reveals that he's a first-year student. The scar-faced man is absolutely shocked to hear this because he can't even fathom the possibility of a freshman knowing so much already. As far as he's concerned, it should be impossible for a newly enrolled first-year student to know this much, and all of his classmates feel the same way. As amazed as he is by the white-haired boy, the class has to continue, so he goes over the answers one last time and admits that Dane's response reminds him of soldiers and officials who have actually been on the battlefield. But then again, he's convinced that there's no way a freshman like him has any battle experience, so he's extremely perplexed. It's starting to get a little awkward for our boy because Professor Gavious seems to be a little too intrigued and curious about him. He wouldn't want the former military man to start getting any funny ideas, so he decides to give the man a believable explanation for why he's so knowledgeable. Dane claims that he often heard stories from his father, and of course, the professor is curious to know who his old man is. At this point, our hero introduces himself as Dane Saugers, and it only takes the professor a second to realize that he is talking to the son of House Saugers. The man is a little nervous when he realizes that the son of the Blue Whirlwind is a student in his class, and everything else begins to make a lot more sense because he knows a lot about Dane's father. Now that he knows the boy is Dane Saugers, he thinks back to all the other rumors he heard recently, like the one about the student who passed the autonomous major exam in one go. With this idea now at the back of his mind, he's no longer surprised that the boy seems different from all the other freshmen. Professor Gabius has certainly taken an interest in our boy, but he still has a class to teach, so he changes the topic and tells the students to listen carefully. He explains that the military science they will be learning is something along the lines of Dane's answer. He claims that it will be based on the textbook, but that it can be applied appropriately in real-life situations. That being said, he explains that this is the ultimate goal of military science. As much as he wants to focus on the class, Gabius can't help but keep thinking about Dane. He feels that the boy is a really good seedling that came in this time. Eventually, he manages to get the slight feeling of obsession out of his system and finally decides that it's time to move on to the next topic. After the class, we catch up with our boy in the hallway, but he doesn't look too happy. Apparently, the professor cornered him after the class and almost sucked him into graduate school in the process. In a flashback, we see Professor Gabius asking Dane if he really has no thoughts on going deeper into his study of military science. Hearing this, Dane immediately realizes that this is why the man called him back right after the class was over. The man seemed to be in a hurry, recommending graduate school to a freshman. Our boy knows that if someone offers you a place in the Imperial Graduate School, the first thing to do is escape. Don't even think about refusing or anything, just leave. The reason he knows this is because it's exactly what his big sister told him before he got enrolled into the academy. Thinking back to that moment now, he realizes that his second sister's advice saved him. Dane feels his current dilemma is a bit worrying since the man doesn't look like someone who would give up right away. As much as it bothers him, he figures that it's best to focus on other things to take his mind off it. He checks the map to see what his current location is, but he has a hard time figuring it out because the academy's map is really too large. The place he agreed to meet Layla is the central fountain square, and that's what he's trying to locate. Thankfully, he finds it on the map just then and realizes that going through the Misty Garden seems to be the fastest way there. The scene shifts and the story continues in a really beautiful place that's called the Misty Garden. The reason for this name is because if the weather was even slightly cloudy, the entire garden would be covered in fog, making it very easy to lose your sense of direction there. Because of this, the large garden became a place people avoided once it was foggy. Besides that, there's also a rumor that ghosts appear there at night. Our boy stands at the entrance of the garden and admits that it looks even better than what his eldest sister described to him. Right now, the weather is pretty nice and sunny, so he feels that he should go in and get to the other side quickly since he can still see where he's going. His thoughts are interrupted all of a sudden when he hears someone screaming for help. The person begs to be saved and desperately asks anyone at all to come help them out. The loud screams can be heard from behind a huge door, and Dane is the only one around when he hears the noises. He becomes quite concerned. He turns around to check where the noise came from, and when he pinpoints the place, he dashes over there to help out this mysterious damsel in distress. He remembers how his mother always said that he should help without hesitation if he ever came across someone in need. There's still a lot of time before his next class, so he feels that he should be able to bring the person out with him and still meet up with Layla. Without thinking twice about it, Dane dashes into the deeper parts of the Misty Garden, following the cries for help, determined to save this person, whoever they are. Our boy blazes through everything in his path and eventually finds the person that was calling out to him. Surprisingly, it's not exactly a damsel, but of course, Dane doesn't care about that. The young man he just rescued thanks him, and admits that he already thought he was stranded there, so our boy asks him if he got hurt or something. The guy claims that he isn't hurt, explaining that he's just a bit tired. Now that they've gotten all that out of the way, the guy introduces himself as Ernest Dillon, who happens to be a first-year exploration student. As you can imagine, our boy finds it pretty ironic that an exploration student somehow managed to get stranded in the Misty Garden. In Ernest's defense, he just got a bit excited and got too into exploring. But Dane isn't satisfied with this excuse because he doesn't get how you can get so excited to the point that you get lost. As much as he'd like to understand what could have made an exploration student get lost, he's also pretty curious about the Dillon Barony. He knows that it's a house in the west, and from what he's heard, the crest is a boat and a sailor. He asks to confirm if he's right, and Ernest is just blown away by the fact that Dane even knows what kind of house he's from. Dane recalls the Dillon Barony as a house famous for exploration, and Ernest gladly confirms this. For generations, his ancestors have explored the seas and unknown lands, which is probably why he chose to study the same thing at the Imperial Academy. Unfortunately, from the look of things, Dane feels that the boy seems a bit too scrawny for such a venture. Ernest is really excited that our boy was able to recognize his house so easily and considers it a pleasant surprise. At this point, he's eager to find out who his wise white-haired savior is, so he asks Dane for his name. Our boy introduces himself and Ernest is instantly taken aback. He immediately recognizes our boy as the freshman who was the first to enter the autonomous department in 50 years. The white-haired genius nervously confirms this, worried that this guy might get obsessed with him any moment now. Sure enough, the nerdy explorer starts talking about how lucky he is and how he really hoped to meet the famous Dane Saugers even once. Our boy tries to downplay his reputation, but then he's interrupted when he notices the throbbing bruise on Ernest's neck. The boy said that he wasn't hurt anywhere, so what's with those bruises? The boy even seems to have a few scars as well, which Dane finds suspicious because they're very different from the kind of injuries sustained during exploration. Our boy is very curious and a few ideas come to mind, but he can't be sure, so he decides to spend some more time with Ernest. He asks the kid if he was exploring in the garden and he confirms that he was, stating that exploration excites him. Apparently, it's not just the garden, but everything new that Ernest encounters is an adventure to him. From people to things in places like this labyrinth garden. He shows Dane his bag full of strange stuff and our boy asks if it's his exploration equipment. Ernest explains that they are and then reveals that his goal is to explore the whole academy. To him, this misty garden is the same and he's certain that there's something special here. It doesn't make sense that it always becomes foggy just because the weather is a bit cloudy. At this point, Dane is starting to get a little overwhelmed because the boy is definitely a conspiracy theorist. Either way, he's still curious, so he asks Ernest if he found anything yet. The scrawny boy admits that he hasn't found anything yet, but he's certain that there's some kind of force at work in the garden that causes the mist. No one has figured it out, but he feels that this might be because no one ever thought to look, or they tried, but something prevented them from finding it. Ernest is convinced that there's a reason those who tried couldn't find anything, and even though the reason is unknown right now, he believes that it might be due to an unknown element, such as a legacy from a lost ancient kingdom or summons from beyond the horizon. Right now, this kid managed to go from 0 to 100 with his theory, but it still sounds pretty interesting to Dane that a legacy from an ancient kingdom could be responsible for the thick fogs. Hearing this, Ernest is even more motivated to find the answers because he truly believes that he is onto something with his theory. Just when the boy is about to start going all crazy, Dane remembers that he was on his way to class before all this, so he makes this clear to Ernest, and they get moving. It looks as though everything is going to be alright, but as soon as they attempt to get out of the garden, it starts to rain, and as you already know, that's the last thing they need right now. Ernest begins to panic, telling Dane that this is very bad for them because the place fills with fog much faster when it rains. Hearing this, our boy also becomes concerned because it means that it would be very difficult for them to get out of there. The scrawny kid confirms this, stating that they'll lose their sense of direction very quickly. He takes out a compass and attempts to navigate through the misty garden, but just as he feared, it's futile. The compass starts malfunctioning all of a sudden, and all that talk about forces no longer sounds so crazy. Ernest informs Dane that his compass isn't working anymore, and this means that they won't even be able to move from this spot at all. Hearing such disturbing news, our boy becomes pretty worried too, so he asks the Dylan boy if he can't use his exploration skills to find a way out. Unfortunately, the boy's skills aren't potent enough to do anything tangible in the misty garden. He's practically paralyzed now that it's raining, claiming that there might have been a way out if they were any other place. Here, he's convinced that unknown forces are at work, and so there's very little he can do to change their fate. As soon as Dane hears this, he becomes extremely worried. He's heard some scary stuff about the misty garden, but he never imagined that he would find himself right in the eye of the storm, at least not so early. To think that unknown forces are against them, he figures that they're basically trapped here. The thick fogs appear and obstruct their vision in seconds. As the mist fills the garden, Ernest claims that his body is starting to feel heavy. He's scared and confused, so he asks Dane what they should do. At the moment, they're in a lot of trouble and the scrawny boy can't help but feel responsible for it. He apologizes to Dane, blaming himself, but our boy tells him not to worry too much, claiming that they should just wait and see what happens. As much as he would like to keep his cool in this situation, he can't help but feel something really fishy about this fog. It's oddly familiar, and it's like he's imagining things at this point. As the mist rises up to his face, he suddenly realizes that he feels more energized for some strange reason. While he's still thinking about this, something even more shocking happens which leaves him stunned. As for Ernest, the poor kid feels so bad about the situation. He feels that it's all his fault, and he is afraid that Dane will end up in danger all because of him. While he's busy sobbing in a corner, a bright light starts shining next to him, and when he takes a closer look, he is astounded to see that Dane is the one causing it. His eyes widen in shock as he sees the bright blue waves of energy swirling all around his new friend. While he's still trying to wrap his head around the whole thing, the concentrated flow of mana piles up and literally blows him away. He grunts as he finds himself being tossed to the side. It's a lot of mana, and he's probably never seen so much of it come from one person. By the time he's getting back up on his feet, he is even more surprised to see that all the fog around Dane is quickly dissipating. Ernest can't even comprehend what he just saw, so he asks Dane what on earth is going on. Our boy quietly does his thing, and continues to disperse the fog around them to clear the path for them. After a while, he finally answers the scrawny boy, telling him that it's time for them to get out of the garden. He says this with a lot of confidence, which leaves Ernest a little taken aback at first. But then our hero tells the boy that he thinks he knows a way out of the garden. As you can imagine, the boy is still very curious, so he asks him how he knows a way out. Dane doesn't really say anything in response. Instead, he just keeps dispersing the fog around them even as the rain keeps pouring. A small smile appears on his face as he realizes that he might actually figure out the secret of this place that Ernest has been so obsessed with. The scrawny boy follows Dane's lead without hesitation, but wondering what the hell is going on. So many mages were unable to figure out this mysterious fog, so he's really blown away by the fact that Dane is going deeper without any signs of difficulty. Besides that, he also notices that the fog clears up everywhere that Dane passes. All of these things just makes Ernest adore the white-haired genius even more. He's convinced that our boy really is an amazing guy, and so he's ready to follow him anywhere. After a while, they eventually make it to a part of the confusing garden, and Dane casually informs Ernest that they're there. As soon as the kid steps in there, he is shocked because he never would have imagined that they'd find a way out. But then, he suddenly realizes that they're not actually outside the misty garden yet, but actually at the center, which is even more mind-blowing. The story resumes in the middle of the misty garden, where the scrawny explorer remains in awe of the fountain in front of him. His mind is absolutely blown because he probably didn't think it would look this amazing. On the other hand, Dane is just pretty curious about the whole thing, so he asks Ernest if there's actually something special about the fountain. In response, the boy confirms this, explaining that the goal of most students who enter the misty garden is to reach this place. Seeing the look of confusion on Dane's face, Ernest immediately realizes that the white-haired prodigy probably doesn't even know the legend of this place. Sure enough, our boy has no idea, so he becomes even more confused when he hears this. He asks the scrawny kid what he's talking about, so Ernest tells him how legend says that those who reach the fountain before the fog clears will end up with the person they want. Basically, this is a love fountain that helps people end up with those they love. As soon as Dane pieces this together, he figures that this legend is probably one of those common romance tales. Even though he doesn't necessarily care about those love powers of the fountain, he's pretty curious about how it maintains its magic. The fountain is located in a place that's difficult to even reach, so he doesn't get how it can keep running since there's most likely nobody maintaining it. As soon as Ernest hears this, he realizes that Dane is actually right. The explorer has never really thought about this before, so now he realizes how weird it is that the fountain keeps running even when there's no one there to continuously recharge the mana. Seeing that this is the case, Dane begins to think that the fountain might have an energy source so powerful that recharging it is not even necessary. Ernest certainly hasn't thought about this before, so the whole talk about an energy source is a really new concept to him. But now that they're on the same page, he suggests that the entire garden might actually be a huge array. At the same time, Dane thinks that this is the case, because as far as he's concerned, the garden is certainly winding and needlessly complicated enough for it to actually be an array. With that being said, Ernest chimes in again, concluding that the magic fountain could actually be an ancient relic since it is in the middle of a huge array. Our boy thinks back to a few moments ago and remembers how the fog could be connected as well, and based on the feelings he got from the fountain, he's quite certain about it. He can tell that something inside him is reacting to the fountain, and it almost feels as if he's meeting an old friend by being in the middle of the misty garden. With his hand still placed on the fountain, he concentrates to figure out exactly what he is feeling, and then all of a sudden, he opens his eyes and concludes that this is ancient magic for sure. He runs his fingers on the symbols inscribed on the fountain, but is taken aback all of a sudden. Ernest informs him that this is the ancient Secrete language. Our boy is a bit shocked at the explorer's conclusion, but the scrawny kid assures him that he knows what he is talking about. Ernest admits that he wasn't sure at first since the inscriptions were a bit blurry, but after touching them, he became certain. He reveals that this is the language used in the lost ancient kingdom of Secrete. Hearing this, Dane is pretty amazed and shocked too, because he didn't even think that the kid would be able to even know something like that. But then again, this kid is from House Dillon, so he reminds Dane that knowing ancient languages like this is essential for explorers. It doesn't take long for the skinny exploration student to get to work. He locks in and begins reading all the symbols he can find on the fountain. Dane just watches him do his thing and admits that it would have been really frustrating if they arrived at the ruin and weren't able to read the writing there. In response, Ernest simply admits that he hasn't actually learned all the languages, suggesting that they're pretty lucky since he learned this one from his father when he was still quite young. He's so excited that he can be this useful, so he gladly tells Dane that he'll do his best to decipher the writings on the fountain. Seeing this, our boy is pretty excited and no longer disappointed, because it's clear that the boy's instincts as an explorer have finally been activated. Ernest locks in and begins deciding the first few words with razor-sharp focus. He takes out his little note and writes down all the words he interprets, and after a while, he's finally able to make sense of it. Feeling really excited, he immediately informs Dane that he deciphered it, so the young prodigy curiously asks him what the inscription says. That's when he turns the book for Dane to see the writings, saying that they should prove their strength if they are qualified. These words are not exactly the kind that Dane expected from a love fountain, so it takes him a while to process what he just read. He is a little puzzled, wondering if being qualified refers to ancient magic in this situation. As confusing as all this might be right now, our boy is sure of one thing, which is the fact that he did feel something was familiar as he got closer to the center. Ernest seems to be thinking on the same wavelength as Dane because he also feels that the qualification mentioned here must be an ancient power. The kid is sure that there's no way anyone with such power is even at their school, but while he's still talking, Dane cuts him off by thanking him, and then our hero proceeds to demonstrate some mind-blowing magical abilities. Seeing it with his own eyes, Ernest is stunned, so he asks Dane what he even is. Meanwhile, the prodigy in question just thinks about how runes hold a power to themselves. He remembers Master Sidrain giving him a bracelet, and so he figures that it might react with the fountain if he uses it. Without thinking twice, he uses the bracelet to see what happens, and strange writings appear on it immediately as it flows brightly. As soon as this happens, our boy takes it off and throws it into the water, allowing the ancient magic to do the rest. As the bracelet sinks to the bottom of the fountain, all the water in there shoots out immediately like a tsunami, and the two young men are instantly taken aback. Ernest is particularly terrified because he doesn't even have any idea what is going on. He notices that the water is shaking violently, and while he's still trying to figure out what the hell is happening, a strange object shoots out of the water while the rest of the fountain goes into the ground in the blink of an eye. After witnessing something as unbelievable as this, Ernest begins to panic, so he asks Dane what he did, wondering what would make the fountain go into the ground just like that. With the explorer scared shitless, our boy just smiles with pride, realizing that he got the answer to the challenge. The effects from the fountain going into the ground and all the strange events causes a powerful wave of magical energy to spread out, blowing everything in its path. Ernest struggles to stay on his feet as the force from the wind is so much, but Dane looks pretty unaffected by the whole thing, and it's almost as if he's holding the wind back with ease. This just makes the explorer more curious about who the hell this young man is, because first it was the fog, and now he's activating an ancient relic as if it's nothing. As the magical energy flows all around our boy, his body practically starts glowing, and when Ernest notices this too, he realizes that Dane is actually the person who is qualified to be here. Just then, that strange diamond-shaped object starts shining in the middle, so our boy points this out to his explorer friend. Both boys are stunned when the large object starts shining like a diamond, and at this point, it resembles a pretty gem, so they figure that it must be the fountain's energy source. With this in mind, our boy suggests that this glowing object might actually be the source of all the strange happenings in this garden. As you can imagine, Ernest is absolutely fascinated by what is in front of him. He finds the whole thing so amazing and can't even take his eyes off it. Meanwhile, now that our boy knows the source of the garden's strange traits, he decides that it's time to take a look at that ancient power within it. Just then, Dane concentrates the magical energy around him, and it doesn't take long for some kind of deal to appear beneath him. He reaches in to confirm his thoughts about the magic from the fountain and is not surprised to realize that the ancient magic is the same as his own mana. As he continues to control all the magic around him, he suddenly realizes something strange. Some more inscriptions appear on the fountain's magic source, and they're in the same Secrete language as the previous ones, but this time around, Dane casually interprets the writing, saying that this is the legacy of Archana that once existed and perished. As you can imagine, our boy is shocked that he could easily understand the language he didn't even know about a few moments ago. As far as he's concerned, this is really amazing, and it makes him conclude that this must really be a legacy from the magic kingdom of Archana. But if that's the case, he wonders if it means that he just absorbed this power. While he's still trying to figure out the answer to this, he feels a sharp pain in his chest all of a sudden. Dane already knows that something just happened to his heart, and while he's groaning in agony, we get to see his heart surrounded by the fibers of magical energy. It's almost as if they're about to tie up his heart, and that would be really bad for him because he has no idea how to even stop that. However, just when it looks like our favorite prodigy is about to die of cardiac arrest, he realizes that a magic circle just appeared around his heart. He has no idea why or how this just happened, and it turns out that it's not just a circle because there's also a core there. This is quite shocking and also very strange to Dane because he knows that these two symbols have contradictory roles. Because of this, it's unlikely that anyone would have both. Our boy remembers how it just wasn't efficient or even good for the body. It's the reason why magic swordsmen ended up being forced to live with heart disease. Unfortunately, our boy has somehow found himself in a pickle because he has both for some reason. Dane knew about this since his previous life, which is why he wanted to use magic without having to create a circle. As much as he tried to avoid the big problem, he has now had the dilemma forced upon him. It's been a while since he felt the sharp sting in his cheek, and now it looks like everything is all good since that's what he's been telling Ernest. But even at that, the explorer keeps asking him if he's actually fine because he noticed that the genius student has been looking a bit pale for a while now. Seeing how concerned Ernest is, Dane just forces a smile on his face and assures the kid that he shouldn't worry, claiming that he just has something on his mind. In response, the kid admits that he was also very surprised by what happened earlier, so he curiously asks Dane if he absorbed that huge surge of power he saw earlier. The clever explorer is pretty suspicious because he noticed that the fog and the words they saw at the fountain all seem to have something to do with Dane. Our boy is just speechless because he doesn't even know how to evade the interrogation anymore. He knows that Ernest must have a lot of questions after seeing everything that happened earlier, and as much as he'd like to open up, he feels that it's better not to tell the kid anything, at least for the meantime. With this in mind, he quickly comes up with a lie to get the explorer off his tail. He tells Ernest that he used a method his sister taught him and claims that he's not sure of the details either. He says this with a really nervous laugh, hoping that Ernest stops asking him about it. Luckily for him, the kid gets the idea and simply asks him to tell him all about the method if he finds out the details later. Hearing this, our boy is a bit relieved, but Ernest is not that settled. The kid feels like his blood is boiling as an explorer because he's just so excited about everything they've discovered. He asks Dane what he thinks about continuing to discover all the mysterious and secret places within the academy, and asks him to keep him updated if he ever finds Anote's amazing place there. In response, our boy assures the explorer that he'll do just that, and now that he thinks about it, he feels that he might be able to find condensed mana like this in other places as well. There's no doubt that these two have had a pretty adventurous few hours together, so now it's time to part ways. Ernest remembers that Dane said he has a class to attend, and that's when our boy realizes he forgot all about his meeting with Layla. He freaks out as soon as he remembers because he knows that pink-haired girl will most likely murder him for being late. With this in mind, he apologizes to Ernest for leaving him all alone and promises to see him later, before dashing out of the garden to meet Layla. As the young genius runs off, Ernest just watches him with all laced all over his face and thinks about what an interesting person he just met. He feels that many amazing things will happen if he keeps exploring with Dane, and even though they only just met, he's already looking forward to many more adventures with our boy. While the explorer is busy daydreaming, our boy blazes through the academy in a race against time. He's literally running like the Flash, which is surprising for even him, so he wonders why it's so easy to move this fast. Sure, he knows that a circle and a core are coexisting within him, but he doesn't sense any incongruity, which is strange. Usually, a circle interferes with a core's mana-lowering efficiency, but that's not the case right now. No matter how much mana Dane uses, he still doesn't feel anything different. In fact, it's actually the other way around judging by what he's feeling, and this is absolutely great for him. You can tell by the wide smile on his face that he's enjoying his current state. The reason for this enhancement is the fact that his mana has been filtered through the circle and then gathered again in the core. On top of that, the mana gathered in the core is purer than it was before, so there's practically all-round improvement. Dane is so amazed by this new discovery and decides that he should probably talk to his eldest sister about it. The scene shifts, and the next place we're taken to is somewhere called Hankston Hall. Apparently, our boy has met up with Layla, and since his head is still on his shoulders, it's clear that he made it just in time. The pink-haired girl is so excited to be at the academy, and since her best friend is here with her, she's more than happy to give him a tour, which starts at the famous Hankston Hall. Layla admits that she has only ever heard about it and never actually entered, but now that they're here, she can't wait to explore it. She takes a closer look and spots the entrance, so she points Dane's attention to it. They both turn to it, and Layla claims that this must be the famous mana curtain. As you can imagine, Dane has no idea what she's talking about since he's never been there either. Hearing the tone in his voice, she figures that he's clueless, so she explains that the mana curtain was made by Saul Hankston, a legendary mage who graduated from the academy. She reveals that the curtain is only used once a year for new students who show a talent for magic. She tells Dane that different colors appear depending on the quality or level of one's magic power when they pass through the curtain. Hearing this, our boy is pretty intrigued by the whole thing. Layla resumes her little lecture, revealing that the curtain was originally created to filter out dark mages who secretly infiltrated the academy, but seems to have changed to this function after dark mages became extinct. After listening to everything she just told him, our boy is extremely curious about the magic curtain, so he asks her what color corresponds with what level when one passes through. Thankfully, she knows the answer, so she wastes no time in breaking it down for him. Layla explains that those who have no talent at all will not notice any color change in the curtain. If one has decent magic talent and passes through the curtain, then they'll see a yellow color. Those who have considerable talent will observe that the curtain changes to blue. And finally, those who possess overwhelming talent in magic will cause the curtains to turn red when they pass through. Our boy is really impressed with her response and how easily she broke it down for him, so he commends her, suggesting that she's studied a lot. In response, Layla winks at him, feeling really proud of herself, claiming that she just wanted to know everything about the academy. Just then, she remembers that both of Dane's older sisters were red when they passed through the curtain, so she lets him know. After all the chit-chat and history lessons, Layla figures that it's time to see what her magical power is like, so she steps forward, telling Dane that she'd like to go first. Unsurprisingly, when Layla walks through the mana curtain, the red color appears, confirming that she has overwhelming talent, which makes her really excited. She's so glad to see that it's red, and our boy is equally happy for her, admitting that it's really great. The cheery girl giggles with pride, claiming that she expected it, and at this point, our boy is even more curious to see what color he'll be. So, he asks if he can try it out, and without hesitation, he struts toward the mana curtain. With each step, he wonders if the color should also be red for him because he just absorbed ancient magic not too long ago. He's afraid that he might be stronger than usual because of that, but there's only one way to find out, so he walks through the Mana curtain and to their surprise, an unexpected green color appears. They're both confused, especially Layla, who studied the Mana curtain deeply and never saw anything like green on the list of colors. At this point, she's a little pissed because it's not the first time Dane is doing something like this. He always manages to be different when it comes to stuff like this, and she's starting to get sick of it, but while she's fuming, he just laughs because he also doesn't know why it's always like this for him. The story continues as the scene shifts to the orientation ceremony, where we see a few of the students complaining about something. Apparently, the person taking the class is from the finance department, so the students don't get why he's the one handling the class. Some feel that it's not such a bad thing since their undergraduate classes have always been so popular, while some just feel that the guy will probably disappear after the orientation anyway. The ginger-haired student at the front of the group confronts the senior, Alter, asking him why he's here, but before he can finish his question, the big guy cuts him off. Alter claims that he has something to inform them about after the class. It turns out that his main reason for coming is because he is interested in Dane Saugers. However, the young genius in question is not around right now, so there's no point talking about it. This big guy who came looking for our boy is a 5th-year magic student, Alter Diamet, and he has been obsessed with meeting the genius prodigy who passed the autonomous major exam. Realizing Alter's reason for coming, the ginger-haired boy confirms that Dane will be taking this class with them, but also admits that he hasn't seen the top student either. Hearing this, the desperate senior concludes that Dane must be taking his precious time to get to class, and for that reason, Alter tells them to bring Dane to him whenever he finally arrives. He gives them the impression that he wants to help Dane, claiming that he has to take special care of the boy since he's Senior Arabella's younger brother. The nervous ginger just agrees with Alter, not wanting to get into trouble with the big guy. After passing the message, Alter decides to take his leave, but just when he is about to step out, he hears whispers that catch his attention. The big guy stops in his tracks when he hears some of the freshman girls talking about how handsome someone is, with his eyes that look like emeralds. They also acknowledge the young lady standing next to him, who is none other than Layla Thermion. As soon as Dane enters the room, he can tell that they're all staring at him, and he already knows that they're talking about him. A wave of shyness washes over him instantly, since he's not exactly one who likes to be the center of attention. Layla, on the other hand, is perfectly fine with that, and she is pretty happy for him. While he's freaking out about it, she just teases him, telling him how he's a hit wherever he goes since he's the top student. As soon as Alter realizes that the one who just entered the room is Dane, a mischievous smile creeps up on his face. He's glad that the top student finally came and can't wait to set his plan in motion. Without wasting a second, he walks up to our boy and politely greets him, admitting that it's truly a pleasure to meet him. Dane is quite confused since he has no idea who this guy is, but Alter just keeps flattering him, admitting that he left quite the impression during the entrance ceremony. Our boy just stands there confused, wondering who this guy is. Seeing how mature the student is, he can tell that he's an upperclassman, but what he doesn't get is why the guy is acting so familiar. Eventually, he gets tired of the weirdness, so he bluntly asks Alter who he is, leaving the senior dumbfounded by his boldness. Dane then reminds him that he's supposed to introduce himself when talking to someone for the first time, since the magic department probably teaches that too. As you can imagine, Alter feels insulted, so he snaps at the young genius, but Dane is unfazed, so he tells Alter to introduce himself first if he has anything to say to him. At this point, the big blondie is boiling with rage. He concludes that Dane is an insolent bastard, and even the other freshmen can't believe that he talked to a senior like that. They're afraid that this will cause trouble for them because they already know that the easiest way to end your life at this academy is to get on the bad side of a senior. Even though Alter is furious, he calmly explains that he came to find Dane since he's the younger brother of a senior he admires. He also calls our boy out for being insolent and informs him that his actions right now could affect his family's reputation. In response, Dane admits that he doesn't feel that way and suggests that Alter is the one lacking manners here. At this point, the senior is gritting his teeth with frustration. His patience is running out, and he feels that he can't let such disrespect slide because he'll lose even more respect from other juniors. So, he decides to teach Dane a lesson, feeling that Senior Arabella will understand if she finds out he scolded her brother. Alter suddenly activates his magic and tells our boy that he needs some training, but just when they're about to square up, a teacher interrupts them. The brown-haired professor slams the table to get their attention and asks what all the commotion is about. Not wanting to get in any trouble, Alter immediately claims that he just came to greet the freshmen. This professor happens to be the dean of the magic department, Denavo. Feeling suspicious about the scene before him, he simply tells Alter that they can get to know each other after the class. That being said, the senior makes his way out, claiming that he'll let Dane off the hook only this once. After witnessing what just happened, Layla tells our boy that he should be careful because Alter doesn't look like a good person. As you can imagine, the angry senior doesn't plan to let this encounter slide, so he tells one of his minions to bring Dane to a special location after. The associate is worried that they'll get in trouble since Dane is Arabella's brother, but Alter assures him that he'll sort everything out with the big sister. Once the bullies are gone, Professor Denavo addresses the students, promising to keep things simple and end the class on an easy note since it's orientation day after all. However, since it's a practical class, he is going to do a light magic aptitude test. He reveals the mana measuring device on the table and the freshmen are mesmerized by it. DeNavo explains that they just have to put their hands on the machine and pour their magic power into it for the test, claiming that the device will show how many circles each of them have. The professor is the first to demonstrate and the device measures 8 circles for him, which impresses all the students. DeNavo explains that the darkness of the circles also determines how much more powerful the individual is, even though they may have the same number of circles. He also reveals that there are cases where no circles will be seen, but he assures them that not having circles doesn't mean they don't have talent for magic. This is because there are people who haven't formed their circles yet, which is also why they can't test for circles alone. Professor DeNavo explains that taking this class in the first place means they should already know how to do basic introductory magic, so he informs them that they'll be using some special marbles to test their mana more precisely. Dane is a little taken aback by the marbles since he's not exactly familiar with this test. On the other hand, the professor explains that the students will need to move as many marbles as they can to form a shape using telekinesis. He is the first to demonstrate and of course, he manages to create a shape that leaves the class amazed because he literally writes runes with the marbles. To these freshmen, what he just did should even be impossible because it's extremely difficult to move something so delicately with telekinesis. Layla just watches the professor's display, feeling intimidated because she knows that even the power of basic magic is different depending on the user. They need to infuse each marble with mana to make them move, so she's afraid that the best they'll be able to do at their level is move 3 marbles. However, she's confident that our boy will probably do better than all the others in the class, but then again, Dane admits that he's not so sure about that. After demonstrating, DeNavo calls on Alter, who happens to be seated at the back of the class. Sure, the senior is just sitting in today, but the professor still calls on him to demonstrate to the freshmen. As you'd expect, the big guy is more than happy to answer the call because he wants to show Dane just how talented he is. At the same time, Dane observes what just happened and starts to understand where the senior's arrogance stems from. Alter quickly gets to the front of the class where he tests his magic in the mana measuring device, and as expected of a senior like him, 4 very dark circles appear. Seeing this, DeNavo commends the senior for improving even more, and Alter just thanks the professor for his teachings. The professor informs the class that a 4-circle chain is something that is usually only achieved after graduating from the academy. However, Alter has already achieved 4-chain, which is very impressive, so DeNavo tells the freshmen to try to get along well with the senior. After the first test, Alter prepares for the marble test, and just as he is about to start, he notices all the students watching anxiously. His focus is on Dane, and since the kid looks extremely quiet, he just feels that the boy is already intimidated. As far as Alter is concerned, it's way too early for Dane to be shocked since he hasn't even gotten to the best part of his demonstration. Just then, he starts controlling many of the marbles with his telekinesis, leaving the students in awe. Alter uses his mana to the very limit just to make sure that he can overwhelm all the students, and so now he's certain that Dane is dreading him. But as you can imagine, our boy is probably unfazed by the theatrics. After Alter does his demonstration, Professor DeNavo commends him immensely once again and makes all the freshmen applaud him a second time. It's just what he expects from Alter, and this man couldn't be happier to have a student like this in the magic department. He's so proud of Alter, and many of the freshmen are so impressed that they're already wondering which of the magic towers the big guy will go to after graduating. Professor DeNavo finally tells Alter to return to his seat after doing such a good job. He goes back to his seat feeling so accomplished, and now he can't wait to see how great Dane's aptitude test will be because he's certain that there's no way the kid is going to outshine him. But we already know that our genius has got many surprises up his sleeves. After Alter returns to his seat, DeNavo reminds the class that nothing will come out for those with no magic power at all when they take the mana measuring test. That being said, he tells them to not bother taking the test and leave if they're worried about that. Thankfully, nobody gets up to walk out, so the professor gladly informs them that they can go ahead with the test. He decides to start with those sitting in the front, but just as the test is about to start, Layla expresses her displeasure because even though this is just an orientation, it's starting to feel like a show and tell of all their magical abilities. In response, Dane just confirms this, telling that the academy is just the kind of place for that. One by one, the freshmen line up to take turns for the first test. The first guy does it and is amazed when he sees a single circle. Unfortunately, some others don't have any circles, and from there, we see some of the other students struggle with the marbles. It doesn't take long for the whole thing to become chaotic, and the arrogant seniors just feel irritated by the test, especially Alter, who thinks it's a total mess. Just then, one of his minions informs him that Dane is about to take the test, and of course, this is what he's been waiting for. He wants to see how far the kid's arrogance will take him, and just as our boy reaches for the device, he realizes that he's also very curious about what his power is now like. He's sure that something must have changed since he recently absorbed the condensed ancient magic. Professor DeNavo recognizes Dane and remembers how the kid perfectly solved the assignment he gave him during the autonomous major exam. As such, he's equally curious to see how many circles the top student will show them. Our boy finally starts pouring his magic power into the device, and judging by the light that fills the large classroom, you can tell that something big is coming. Even though his classmates were already overwhelmed, they're not able to find out how many circles Dane has because the device can't even measure his mana. The error message pops up, leaving everyone confused because they've probably never heard of such a result. Everyone is shocked, including Alter, and they start to realize that the device is broken. The professor can't believe his eyes because he doesn't get why a student's mana can't be measurable. Dane starts to feel bad, knowing that this is probably all because of the ancient magic inside him. DeNavo is dumbfounded because the machine is usually 100% accurate. He's never seen a result like this, and so he informs the class that the machine seems to have been overloaded. That's the only explanation he can give for what just happened, so he decides that they just move on to Dane's marble test. Even though it's pretty clear that the machine was overloaded, Alter refuses to believe that and chooses to think that Dane didn't have any circles. Our boy moves on to the marble test, feeling disappointed that his mana and magic circles couldn't be measured. He's hopeful for a better result this time around, so he steps up to give it a try even though he's not sure if it will work well. He can't find out if he doesn't try, so he closes his eyes to focus and starts by activating his telekinetic powers. Our boy locks in for this second test, determined to do a better job, and luckily, the marbles start moving instantly. Dane uses his telekinesis to carry many of the marbles just like the professor did, and when his classmates see this, they're so shocked that it's scary. Our boy doesn't just lift many marbles, but actually all of them. They all start floating in no time, and even though they're seeing it with their eyes, it's just still too unbelievable because none of them in the class have been able to float more than 5 marbles until now. It's an incredible sight for sure, and it's way too obvious that Dane is extremely talented. Alter can't even pretend anymore since even his buddies are amazed by the fact that all the marbles are floating. It's clear that the young master is amazing, so Alter begins to have a mental breakdown. The big guy can't even understand how any of this could be possible. He's having a hard time believing it, and while he's busy having a panic attack, Layla just looks exhausted. She's not surprised though, because it's just the kind of thing you're supposed to expect with Dane Saugers. He always manages to be in the spotlight when it comes to things like this. Even though she knew he was going to blow everyone away, she admits that she didn't think he would be able to float every single one of the marbles that DeNavo brought out. It turns out that the others aren't the only ones overwhelmed by this outcome, because Dane didn't even imagine he would perform this well on the test. He's almost afraid of his own abilities now because he no longer knows what the limit is. He did better than he expected, so he concludes that he has become stronger thanks to the concentration of the ancient magic he absorbed. After a while, he finally comes to terms with just how powerful he has become, so once he's more relaxed, he decides to have a little fun. He's managed to float all the marbles, so now he wants to see if he can try something amazing with them. With this in mind, our boy starts using the marbles to form a really complicated structure in the air, and it's so jaw-dropping that all the students are literally frozen in place as they watch him do his thing. At this point, even the professor is overwhelmed. This guy is the dean of the magic department, but he clearly hasn't ever seen anyone do something as amazing as this with marbles. He can't believe what he's looking at right now because Dane just managed to surpass everyone's imagination. Apparently, our boy is delicately rearranging the marbles and drawing something right above everyone's heads. By the time he's done, they all have their necks bent as they look up at the drawing hovering above them. Dane does a spectacular job, so they can easily tell that he drew a lion and a snake with the marbles. It turns out that he didn't draw these animals for nothing, because it just so happens that a lion and a snake are the same drawings that are on the crest of House Saugers. The students recognize this symbol and their minds are blown even more as a result. As for our boy, he just has a proud grin plastered on his face because he just managed to do what nobody else has ever managed. The professor finally loses his composure when he sees the crest because it's just unbelievable. Even Arabella wasn't this talented when she was his student, so it's clear that this kid is one of a kind. While our boy is busy flexing his magical powers, Layla finally gets tired of having her mind blown, so she tells him not to show off too much, reminding him that she's supposed to go next. Unfortunately, it's already too late for that because there's really nothing any of them can do to top what he just did. He did so well that there's a chance that even the professor won't be able to outdo him. Now that everyone has been humbled, DeNavo commends Dane on an excellent demonstration, admitting that it's no wonder why Sidrain, someone who never took a disciple before, bragged so much about teaching him. In response, our boy humbly thanks the professor, and that's when his classmates gasp in shock again because they had no idea that he is the disciple of the previous Magic Tower head. Seeing that he is already this good, they can now understand why he was able to pass the autonomous major exam in the first place. Just then, the other seniors ask Alter what he thinks they should do about Dane since he's definitely not an ordinary student. Heck, they even feel that our boy might be stronger than him. Enraged and frustrated by what he just witnessed, he tells his buddy to shut the hell up and let him think properly. Alter is so disturbed by the House Saugers members at the academy. He doesn't get how they can all be monsters when it comes to magic. Seeing that the boy might actually be insanely talented, he realizes that he'll need to rethink his plans because even though it's infuriating, he knows that he'll lose all face if he goes up against the young prodigy and gets defeated. With this in mind, Alter figures that he can only placate Dane since he won't be able to win with his ability. Alter knows that Dane will be way too difficult to beat if he challenges him one-on-one. With this in mind, he tells his buddies that they need to bring the young genius into the student council. Alter wants to get closer to our boy and feels that this is probably going to be the best way to do so. However, his friends are not exactly on the same page as him. They're shocked that he would even suggest adding Dane to the student council, but Alter refuses to change his mind. He reminds them that he's a student council officer and explains that Dane will be easier for him to control if he puts the boy under him. As clever as this plan sounds, Alter's friends still aren't on board. They remind him that Dane is still just a first-year student, explaining how impossible it is because even fifth-year students like them can't get into the student council that easily. Hearing all of this, the big guy admits that there is no precedent for a first-year student joining the student council, but then again, he has a goal that he's determined to achieve, so he really doesn't care about the norms and claims that they'll just have to break that rule boldly. Alter's pals look like they can't even believe the words that just came out of his mouth, but once again, he assures them that everything is going to work out just fine, claiming that they'll even be able to raise the prestige of their magic department through Dane's sagas. Alter is confident about this and ready to do whatever it takes to make it happen because he knows that his own status and career will be raised in the process. After that little sidebar among the seniors comes to an end, the professor commends Dane on an excellent job once again and our boy thanks him once more. DeNavo is so impressed and fascinated by the kid that he claims that he would have fought the other professors to make sure Dane got into the magic department if he knew that the boy was this talented. In response, our boy just promises to do his best in magic even though he's currently in another department. Hearing this, the dean is even more impressed, so he turns to the other students in the class and informs all the magic department students that they should be on guard now that someone like Dane is in the picture. After tooting Dane's horn one last time, the professor tells him that he's free to come around and see him later when he has the time. Our green-eyed hero smiles at the dean and acknowledges the offer with gratitude. The scene shifts after this, and after the class, we catch up with our boy, who's currently being probed by Layla because she just can't understand how he keeps doing unbelievable stuff all the time. She's starting to feel like she doesn't even know him at all and she can no longer hold back her curiosity. Unfortunately, she's not going to get any answers soon because Dane claims that he doesn't really know why those crazy stuff have been happening either. He says this with a really smug look on his face, so Layla instantly concludes that he's trying to brag. She gets a little mad that he's literally saying that he's just that special because she doesn't understand how he can be so casual and nonchalant about all the unbelievable things he's been doing. At this point, Dane reminds her that she was also able to make 5 of those marbles float too, which is pretty impressive for a first-year student. Unfortunately, even though this is supposed to be a compliment, Layla makes it clear that hearing it from him doesn't make her happy at all, since it almost sounds like he's mocking her. Seeing how annoyed she is, Dane just keeps quiet to avoid saying something to piss her off even more. He didn't expect that she'd be sulking this much, so he has to be careful with the next thing he says to her. While he's still thinking of a way to pacify the sensitive girl, he's approached by Alter and his minions. This time around, the big guy is a lot more friendly than before. He doesn't look like he came looking for a fight because the first thing he does is commend our boy for his skills during the test. As you can imagine, our boy isn't exactly pleased to see the guy who tried to bully him not too long ago. Alter knows that Dane probably dislikes him by now, so he quickly admits that he was being too hasty before and politely asks if they can talk for a moment. Dane is taken aback by Alter's new countenance, but he's not exactly surprised because he knows that this guy is changing his attitude only because he saw his abilities. The scene shifts, and after the two young men talk for a while, Dane expresses how shocked he is that Alter wants him to join the student council. He knows that it's a pretty big deal to join such a group, and the senior goes on to confirm that he really wants Dane as one of them. He reveals that the student council decides academy policies and manages the budget. They even hold enormous influence, including various privileges. For example, the student council can discuss disciplinary actions against students or even approve academic department events. It's a really big deal to be in the council, and Alter is currently trying his best to convince Dane to join. Our boy is quite familiar with the body too, since he's heard about it from his eldest sister. He's aware that it's an extremely powerful group that only a few students can join. After giving his pitch, Alter asks Dane what he thinks about joining the council, claiming that he can recommend our boy as an officer. After all, he's the top student, which more than qualifies him for the job since he exceeds the requirements. Dane doesn't say anything in response at first, so the senior keeps trying to get him on board, informing him that he will automatically become a part of the Dantera Hall if he agrees to become a student council officer. In response, Dane informs Alter that he's already a part of Dantera Hall, but the senior just reminds him that he might not be able to stay there till he graduates, unlike if he joins the council. Besides that, he informs the young genius that there are some immunity privileges that come with being a student council officer. Hearing this, and how confident Alter sounds about the whole thing, Dane begins to wonder just how many privileges they even have, because it's starting to look like the student could have extraterritorial rights or something. He's still trying to work this out in his head when the desperate senior gets in his face again, anxiously asking him if he's finally interested now. Unfortunately, our boy bluntly declines the offer, claiming that he's not really interested in joining them. As you'd imagine, this response is like a low blow to Alter, who can't believe what he just heard. He's so disappointed and concludes that Dane must be a bastard. On the other hand, the young genius calmly explains that even if he joins the council, he won't be interested unless it's by his own strength and not some recommendation. Besides, he already knows that privileges without reason always come with a price at the end of the day. As soon as he makes this point, the other seniors begin to panic because they didn't expect a freshman to be this sharp. He literally figured out Alter's true intentions very quickly. Enraged by Dane's choice, the senior asks the boy if he knows what he just turned down, explaining that everyone in the academy dreams of getting into the student council. That being said, he concludes that Dane will probably realize how incredible this offer was once he spends some time in the academy. Even though Alter is acting all tough right now, deep down, he still wants Dane to join the council, so he calmly asks the boy to think it over again. Hearing this, our boy is a little weirded out because he doesn't get why the senior is being so persistent about it. At the same time, Layla looks like she's getting frustrated, and then she suddenly snaps, grabbing Dane's hand and dragging him away from there. Apparently, she was fed up with the conversation, so she cleverly gets our boy out of there, claiming that they need to get to lunch quickly because all the tarts will be gone if they're late. Of course, Alter isn't happy to see Dane walking out on him in the middle of their conversation, so he tries to call the young genius back, but our boy casually tells him that he's got a prior engagement to attend to and laughs as he evades any further questions. He sighs in relief as they walk away, mentally thanking Layla for her perfectly timed intervention. As for Alter, he just stands there and watches the duo as they leave. Despite being really annoyed, he informs his pals that he hasn't given up yet. As far as he is concerned, he just needs more details on Dane's sagas to be able to set his master plan in motion. Elsewhere, we catch up with Dane and Layla, who talk about the awkward encounter not too long ago. Layla confirms that Alter is such an annoying guy and points out how hard he was trying to get Dane into the student council. Even though she's just a first-year student, she already has an idea how things work at the academy, so she informs Dane that Alter would have just used it as an excuse to make her friend his pawn if he has accepted the offer. Hearing this, our boy is even more certain that she was trying to protect him by dragging him away from the hungry seniors, so he thanks her for saving him, but she doesn't even hear this because she's too busy being offended by the fact that Alt didn't even ask her if she wanted to join the student council. It's as if he doesn't even rate her at all, and when our boy hears her complaining about this, he realizes that it was what made her so angry. Seeing that Dane finds her lamenting amusing, she lashes out at him a little, blaming him for it because his talent is absolutely ridiculous. She was somehow aware of this before, but now, their test earlier that day confirmed it for sure. Hearing this, our boy asks her if this means that she has finally decided to accept it gracefully, so she just huffs and admits that she doesn't really have a choice. Once that awkward chat is out of the way, Dane asks her if they really do have tarts at the school, which she confirms in a heartbeat. Layla reminds him that he's in the Imperial Academy, claiming that they have every single dessert that exists in the Empire. Our boy is happy to hear this, so he can't wait to get to the dining hall. While the duo make their way to go stuff their bellies, the scene changes and we see Alter in a private meeting with Denavo. The professor asks the senior if he saw Dane's display earlier, and Alter confirms this, stating that the kid was truly amazing. Denavo looks like he's already in love with the young talent because he feels that the boy might even be above his eldest sister Arabella in terms of magic. Alter is taken aback by this assumption because even though he knows that Dane is a genius prodigy, he never imagined that the kid would already be at that level. In response, the professor explains that magic is such a vast field and admits that it's hard to say for sure right now. However, he's convinced that this is probably the case in terms of raw magical talent. Hearing this, Alter begins to panic a little because it would mean that Dane is even more talented in magic than the only senior he admires. It's a really crazy thing to think about, so he spends some time processing it. While he's at it, the professor tells him to keep a close eye on Dane. Apparently, Denavo wants Alter to persuade Dane until he transfers to the magic department, and this just makes the senior really uncomfortable. It's clear that everyone can see the potential in that kid, and it's like they're all enchanted by his talent. Alter knows how difficult it would be to convince Dane to do anything since he already tried so hard to make him join the student council but fail. He tells the professor what happened and the man is shocked by it. Denavo begins to panic all of a sudden, wondering if Arabella already told Dane something to make him decline such an offer. The dean of the magic department is so desperate to keep the prodigy around because he knows that Dane's talent is way too precious to give away. An awkward silence follows after this because neither of them know what to do about Dane. Once the conversation fizzles out, Alter reminds Professor Denavo of a recommendation letter he asked for earlier, but the man admits that such an arrangement won't be easy. The fifth-year student is shocked and disappointed to hear this, but the professor tells him to be patient. Denavo reminds Alter that he still has 2 years left in the academy and assures him that he'll have magic towers lining up for him by the time he graduates. Hearing these words, Alter does his best to hide the disappointment he's feeling behind a fake smile. He curses at the back of his mind because this is exactly what the professor told him the previous year. He feels that that man must think he's dumb because he clearly knows DeNavo's true intentions. Alter knows that the professor will lose a student he can boss around if he manages to get an early placement in a magic tower, so since the professor probably knows this too, he feels that the man is holding him back with all these excuses. After all, Alter heard that this was the same man who cut off the 2 magic towers that he showed interest in back in his 3rd year. Knowing that DeNavo can literally decide his fate, Alter claims that he'll try persuading Dane to join the magic department by himself. Of course, the dean is happy to hear this, but the senior is just frustrated because his future is literally in this man's hands. Whether he likes it or not, he has no choice but to follow all of DeNavo's orders because this old man is the only one who can give him the recommendation letter he so desperately wants. Elsewhere, we catch up with our hero who is currently overwhelmed by the number of club events. He asks Layla if the road to the cafeteria is always this busy, and she responds by explaining that there's so many members because clubs with too few people in them get disbanded. Hearing this, Dane reveals that this is the first time he's participated in so many events, so Layla just suggests that he should be happy about that because he got to win a lot of prizes in return. They got 20 mana storage stones, 15 lunch coupons, 5 general meal tickets, 8 convenience store vouchers, and even a treasure map. It appears that even Layla doesn't know what the map is for, so Dane reveals that the senior running the event said it was bought from a blind auction at the Arkender auction house. As soon as she hears this, her eyes pop with excitement because she feels that it must be a real treasure since it has something to do with Arkender. Dane is equally aware of how special the map must be because his father already told him about it before. The Arkender auction house gathers rare and beautiful items from across the entire empire. The best appraisers in the country thoroughly examine everything, ensuring only authentic items are sold. Layla takes a closer look at the map and notices that the seal is still intact. Dane confirms that it's indeed an Academy treasure map, and she admits that she's heard about a lot of secret places and mysteries in the school. While she's still talking, our boy just zones out and thinks about how much Ernest would love to see something like this. The story continues in the famous Dantera Hall, a place where general education lectures are mostly held. Dane is really excited to see the place for the first time, and he's amazed that this is the place where the Imperial History class is held. Before coming here, he was taught by the head butler, so he already knows most of the material here, which makes this new chapter reassuring. His thoughts are interrupted all of a sudden when Ernest comes around. The explorer greets him and starts walking up to him, which leaves our boy stunned because he didn't know that the guy takes this class too. In response, the kid reveals that the lecture is required for all freshmen. Since that's the case, he came, knowing that Dane would probably be here. Ernest is glad that they ran into each other and curious as to how the genius is feeling now. Hearing this, our boy claims that nothing seems too different, and promises to explain later since it's a bit complicated. Of course, Ernest doesn't have a problem with that, so he chills out with all the questions. Just then, our boy remembers that there was something he wanted to tell him. Unfortunately, before Dane can get to it, they're both interrupted by another student who came looking for the explorer. The brown-haired student stops them, determined to confirm that he's talking to Ernest. At the same time, the explorer seems to be familiar with him. Dane is a little confused by this encounter, and then he notices that Ernest's eyes just changed. The scrawny kid is trembling so much, and it's clear that he's terrified of this other student. The guy looks like a bully for sure, and judging by his tone, it's pretty obvious that it's been a while since he picked on Ernest. Our boy watches the explorer closely and immediately starts to see him as a soldier suffering from trauma. Despite looking like he's about to shit his pants, Ernest greets the big guy named Braun, who claims that he should have said something earlier if he got into Dantera Hall too. At this point, Dane is a little confused because it almost sounds as if they're friends even though it doesn't look like a normal relationship. All of a sudden, Braun rubs Ernest's head the way a big brother would, and the scrawny apologizes for not telling him sooner because he didn't know that he would get in. Braun seems surprised that Ernest even managed to get in because he thought that the boy wouldn't make it since he was shaking like a leaf every time they talked about it. Watching the two, our boy is just dumbfounded because he doesn't know what to think anymore. He's not sure if they're friends or if Braun is Ernest's worst nightmare. Thankfully, it doesn't take too long for things to become clear because Braun suddenly tells the explorer to go buy him a sandwich from the store. Just as Dane suspected, the redhead is a bully who wants to exploit the fragile-looking boy. Ernest is shocked that Braun would send him on such an errand at a time like this. Hearing his tone, the bully gets offended, feeling that he doesn't want to comply, so Ernest quickly explains that he can't go now because he's with a friend. Braun sounds so shocked when he hears that Ernest has a friend, so he tries to kick the kid. That's when he turns to look at the friend in question, Dane, and admits that the young man looks pretty sturdy. At this point, our boy is getting really irritated by the bully, but he just keeps his cool, not wanting to create a scene. Unfortunately, Braun actually wants to make trouble, so he starts by trying to intimidate our boy. He turns to Dane and asks what department he's in because he can't believe that anyone would be friends with Ernest. But since he's with the scrawny kid, he's convinced that he can already tell his level. Dane doesn't say anything in response, and just stares Braun down as he tries to examine the bully. He can't tell what family the redhead is from, but that carefree attitude reminds him of the street things he saw on the battlefield in his previous life. After a few seconds, Dane still doesn't say anything, so Bron gets offended and calls him a bastard for not answering him. Just when it looks like things are about to escalate, another student informs them that the lecture is starting soon. In other words, they should get moving, so when Bron hears this, he decides to postpone this troublemaking session, claiming they'll talk after class since he has a lot to say to Ernest. The scrawny kid just trembles even more upon hearing this, and as the bullies walk away, they talk about how life at the academy is about to get even more interesting. Once the cruel seniors are gone, Dane takes another look at Ernest and notices that the guy is still shaking like a leaf. It's so much that he is forced to ask him if he's alright. Just then, the explorer breaks down and starts apologizing to our boy. He blames himself for everything, but the hero just comforts him and asks him who those guys were because he seemed to know them. In response, he finally reveals that those guys are from another family and that they used to bully him back home. Ernest knew that they were at the academy too, but it's such a big school with so many departments, so he never thought he'd run into them. Unfortunately, he did, so now he feels so bad for dragging Dane into his mess. Our boy can clearly see that the young explorer is very troubled, so he comforts him some more, assuring him that it's alright before suggesting that they just go inside for their class. Hearing this, Ernest finally looks up at him, and that's when he sees how pale the kid looks, which just makes him wonder how badly those guys must have tormented him. The boy is even reluctant to go inside, so Dane offers to go with him, but he's too afraid to get him involved. Ernest claims that he can handle the bullies alone, but Dane reminds him that he's just going to go there alone and then end up doing whatever they tell him to do. Our boy makes him understand that he'll just keep being bullied if that happens. The scrawny boy tries to protest, but the genius reminds him of how powerful his magic was at the fountain. Dane is pretty surprised that the kid is still worried even after witnessing such power. At this point, Ernest actually thinks back to what happened at the fountain and remembers just how strong Dane actually is. He's so strong that it's terrifying. Ernest doesn't argue anymore, so Dane concludes that they're together in it before the explorer can even argue again. After the class, Dane goes with Ernest to meet the bullies, and Bron starts by talking about how nice and quiet it is here. He even suggests that it should bring back old memories for the feeble explorer, but as you can imagine, those memories are probably horrible ones. Seeing that Bron is already trying to mess with Ernest again, he gets mad, so he snaps at the bully, asking him why he called the kid out here just to pick a fight. As far as our boy is concerned, they're not friends, so he doesn't get what Bron's deal is. The big guy is taken aback by Dane's audacity, so he asks him who the hell he is to butt into the conversation. He asks our boy if he has a death wish or something, and Dane bluntly throws the question right back at him. The senior is shocked to hear a freshman talk to him that way, so he loses his shit and calls Dane an arrogant bastard. He feels that our boy must think he's something special just because he got into the Imperial Academy. Seeing how bold Dane is, Bron concludes that the young freshman doesn't know who he is. So he reveals that he's the heir of the most powerful family in the West, the Sauer family. Unfortunately for him, Dane Saugers isn't familiar with the name, and so he doesn't really give a shit about Bron being the heir. He claims that he's never heard of the Sauer family, which leaves Ernest pretty dumbfounded. Even Bron's buddies are left speechless by this because it's an insult, so they ask him if he's just going to stand there and take it. Sure enough, a bully like him won't ever let such a thing slide, so he tells his minions to beat Dane up. They're also excited about it, so they start marching towards the two freshmen, and Bron just tells Ernest that he should have chosen better friends because now he's going to get beaten twice as hard. As you can imagine, Ernest is absolutely terrified because he knows what's coming next, so he tells Dane that they should just leave while they still can. As far as he's concerned, those bullies are way too dangerous to beat no matter how strong Dane is. Ernest is particularly terrified of Bron because the guy has been called a swordsmanship genius since he was a kid. Hearing this, Dane becomes even more interested because he wants to see what the West considers a swordsmanship genius. Our boy is so confident that they can take these bullies, so he tells Ernest that he'll let him face one of them. He tells the scrawny kid to knock the guy's jaw out with one punch, but Ernest doesn't even believe Dane actually means what he just said. However, the genius just tells him to trust him and face his fears because he can't keep living like this forever. The explorer is absolutely bewildered because he really doesn't get what Dane is even talking about right now. Ernest stands there frozen in fear as the first bully charges at Dane. The guy lunges at our boy, but he doesn't even move a muscle, so Ernest calls out to him so he can defend himself. He's taken aback by how calm the white-haired student is being right now, but Dane still doesn't move. The first bully balls his fist and takes a big swing to land a mean blow on Dane's face. The punch looks really heavy, but our boy doesn't even react. The overconfident seniors start laughing at this point, feeling that they're putting Dane in his place. He's motivated to land another blow, but it doesn't work out this time because our boy blocks his attempt with ease, which leaves him in disbelief. Dane informs the bully that he clearly threw the first punch, and for that reason, everything else will have to be self-defense from now on. The dumb goon is so confused because he doesn't even know what Dane is talking about. Enraged by the freshman's guts, he tries to land another punch, but our boy casually sweeps him off the ground with ease. The guy falls hard to the ground with the back of his head making first contact. The second scumbag is surprised when he sees this because he didn't think that Dane would be this good. He attempts to take out the freshman, but our boy gives him a mean palm to the face from under his jaw, which sends him falling back. At the same time, the third thug charges at him, so he decides that it's time to use his magic. The young prodigy conjures a small ball of mana and unleashes a powerful blast on the troublemakers before they can even get to him. This blast sends all of them flying till they crash hard on the ground. With the first wave of bullies wiped out, Braun is the only one left standing. As for Dane, well, he's a little shocked because his attack ended up being stronger than he thought. He begins to think that it must be because of the ancient magic core inside him. Ernest is equally stunned by what he just witnessed. He can't believe his eyes, and neither can Braun. Dane just took out all his goons in the blink of an eye, so he's furious. He calls them idiots for not being able to beat a freshman, but while they're still struggling to get back on their feet, they assure him that Dane isn't normal. Unfortunately for them, Braun doesn't understand, so he just tells them to shut up, claiming that they all look pathetic and so helpless against a first-year student. He can't believe that they lost so easily, but his rants are suddenly cut short when Dane asks him if he's going to keep the attacks coming. He mocks Braun, reminding him how he talked big when he's not even all that. Of course, this is enough to make the bully lose his shit. His blood boils as he prepares to take Dane by himself, but one of his pals advises him to stand down because Dane is just too strong for them. I mean, the kid is literally shooting magic bullets out of his hands, so they're convinced that they can't win against him. Braun, on the other hand, refuses to give up. His ego just won't let him. Enraged by his colleague, he shoves the guy out of the way, calling him a coward and accuses him of being pathetic. Since all his guys have proven useless to him, he decides that he'll just do it himself. Right after saying this, Braun creates a huge magic portal right in front of him, and judging by the sinister smile on his face, you can tell that he's got something crazy in store for them. Ernest knows Braun, so he's not surprised when he knows that the magic portal is never a good thing. Sure enough, the mean redhead pulls out a huge sword, confirming that he's prepared for an insane battle. The scrawny kid is really terrified, while the bully is extremely delighted because he feels that he can do what he wants since no one is around this remote place. He tells Dane that he just made a mistake for making him draw his sword. Seeing the blade, our boy admits that it's a pretty good sword, while Ernest complains about how bad the situation is because he knows nothing good comes after Braun draws his sword. While the explorer is busy dreading the bully, Dane just thinks about how reckless Braun is because he doesn't even care about academy rules. Braun suddenly informs Dane that a very thick fog appears in the aura when the weather gets cloudy. It's the kind of thick fog where no one can find a missing person, so the fact that Braun just pointed this out, it's clear that he's ready to do something that's seriously against the rules. Even his buddy is worried when he says this because it's almost like he's comfortable doing something that could get them expelled. Even though the guy is trying to make him see reason, he's not interested. He tells the guy to shut up and orders him to go beat Ernest up before bringing him over. Despite not wanting to get in so much trouble, he also doesn't want to get Braun mad, so he agrees to do as he says, and they both charge at the freshman. Ernest just stands there, shaking in fear because he still isn't sure he can take the other guy even if Dane takes care of Braun. However, our boy tells him not to worry and assures him that they can't win. Dane feels that the seniors aren't that strong, so he tells Ernest that he'll do great if it's one-on-one. He's surprised that Dane has so much faith in him, but the prodigy just says it once again. He feels that Ernest's lower body strength should be great because he's done a lot of exploring. That being said, he tells the scrawny kid to just squeeze in and land a solid hit. He has so much faith in Ernest, but the kid just doesn't feel confident at all. The bullies charge at them and close in with each step. Surprisingly, Dane starts running away all of a sudden, so Braun pursues him, realizing that he actually has some combat experience for following him. In response, our boy just tells the guy to shut up and follow him. While our boy draws the bigger threat away, Ernest finally starts to develop a bit of courage. He realizes that Dane is right and admits that he can't keep living like this forever. With this in mind, he decides to face his fears and stand up to the other bully. The guy is surprised to see that the little explorer didn't run away. He's surprised that Ernest is even clenching his fist with his eyes looking extremely fierce. For this reason, he decides that he'll go easy on the little explorer, telling him that he'll only take a few hits. Ernest is actually still quite terrified, but he doesn't want to be a coward anymore, so he calms himself down and decides not to panic but actually think about what Dane would do in a situation like this. He recalls how the young genius took out the first wave of bullies with finesse, and while he's still thinking, the guy in front of him leans in to land a mean blow on his face. Of course, Ernest sees it coming, so he braces himself for it, and just when the guy is about to hit his face, he ducks in a flash and slips under to land a direct punch to his face. As his knuckles make contact with the guy's jaw, he makes it clear that the scared kid they knew before isn't him anymore. The bully probably never expected such a powerful hit to come from Ernest, so it's a big shock for him. He falls to the ground from the pain and just keeps groaning in agony for a while. The adrenaline rush in the little explorer's body is still very much so, he's literally shaking in the knees even though he was the one that knocked someone down. He breathes heavily as he looks at the fallen opponent, and after a while, it dawns on him that he actually did it. He can't believe that he really just managed to knock someone down. While he's busy struggling to wrap his head around the situation, we catch up with our boy, who's currently making life really difficult for Braun. He taunts the bully, informing him that his subordinate just went down. The bully is in the middle of an attack when he hears this, so he turns around to confirm it. A wave of horror washes over him when he sees that his buddy got knocked out. He can't even believe his eyes because it shouldn't even be possible. Braun is so annoyed because now he's also losing to Ernest, who he considers a pathetic loser. While he's busy nagging, Dane scans the area and notices 2 brooms that he feels he can use to his advantage. Apparently, he's come up with a plan and we're about to see what he's got in mind. Without wasting any time, our boy quickly grabs one of the brooms and takes a stance to face Braun. Seeing this, the bully is so amused because he doesn't understand how Dane can think he can take him with a broom. In response, our boy simply tells him that the broom should just be enough for him. Braun feels insulted by this, so he calls Dane an arrogant bastard and promises to crush him properly. With a determined look on his face, he charges at our boy with insane speed. He promises not to kill him, telling him that he won't worry too much. He grips his sword tightly, claiming that he'll just leave a small scar on his face so that every time he sees it, he'll remember to fear him next time. Braun unleashes an onslaught on our boy, but Dane defends himself over and over, and this makes the bully even more furious. He calls Dane a bastard once again, and admits that he is tougher than he thought. After taking all of Braun's attacks, Dane teases him, claiming that his sword path is way too predictable. Of course, these words manage to get the redhead even more. He yells in anger, offended by what he just said about his swordsmanship. He's so irritated by Dane's confidence because as far as he's concerned, only the son of Duke Thermion should have that level of confidence in terms of handling the sword. Braun can tell that the white-haired boy is holding his own just because he's infusing his staff with mana. But as far as he's concerned, Dane won't last much longer like this. He keeps trying to intimidate Dane, telling him that he's just a rat trapped in a cage. He feels that the boy can't possibly do anything meaningful with that stupid stick. He launches himself at Dane, yelling like a maniac the whole time. As for our boy, he just smiles confidently, knowing that the bully is falling right into his trap. He stands his ground and waits for Braun to make the next move or even slip up. Sure enough, the hasty bully rushes in, and this gives Dane a perfect opening to land a mean hit with his stick. He stretches the broom and infuses it with even more mana to intensify the power in his next swing. He flicks the stick at Braun, leaving the guy very confused for a split moment. Dane lands a powerful jab right in his gut, and the effect is lethal, of course. Braun's eyes widen in shock as he realizes just how dangerous his opponent is. Now, it's clear that he underestimated Dane because he can't even comprehend how something as basic as just a wooden staff can contain this much power in it. Our boy knocks the bully out with ease, and once Braun falls to the ground, it becomes clear that they just basically defeated the bullies that have been tormenting Ernest for so long. The little explorer turns to see what just happened, and he's absolutely speechless. All he can do is stare in shock as his greatest nightmare lies on the floor defeated. The fact that Dane beat Braun is already very impressive and unbelievable enough, but what's even more amazing is that the white-haired genius managed to do this with just a single hit. And with a broomstick for that matter. As the dust clears, we can see our hero looking absolutely majestic with the staff firmly in his hand. Ernest doesn't even know what to say because it's a really crazy sight. He knew that Dane was strong, but he didn't expect anything like this. He's a freshman too, but he just managed to beat the toughest bully he's not for a long time, and he did it without even breaking a sweat. Braun remains on the floor, groaning in pain, and that's when our boy comes up standing over him. Dane can clearly see that the bully can't fight anymore, but he tells him to get up and draw his blade. He's not willing to give this guy a break, so he tells him that he has to get up and see this fight through till the end. At this point, Braun is probably wishing he never picked on the strange student because it's turning out to be the worst mistake he's made since he arrived at the academy. Not only did our boy humiliate him by beating him with a single blow, but now he's adding insult to the injury by giving Braun a little lecture. Dane talks about how his father told him that drawing a weapon outside a fair duel means that you're ready to see things to the end. Braun was the first to draw the sword, of course, so our boy expects that he should have been ready to fight till the end. However, that's not the case because Braun desperately wants a break. He can't fight anymore, and even if he had the power to, he's not ready to go up against Dane a second time because the kid is clearly on a completely different level. He's terrified of this overpowered freshman, but he wants to lose face any more than he already has, so he puts on a tough demeanor. He yells at Dane, asking him who the hell he is, so the young genius decides that it's time to introduce himself. He reveals that he's the one and only Dane Saugers, the eldest son of the Saugers Count family and a first year in the autonomous department. The bull's eyes widen in shock when he hears this very detailed introduction. Apparently, the main reason he's horrified is because he had no idea that the kid he was facing all this time was actually a member of the Saugers Count family. Now that he's learning of this, he begins to put the pieces together and figures that Dane must be the new student who recently got into the autonomous department after 50 years of no one being able to get in. Braun can't believe that he's been talking to the rumored genius youngest son of the Saugers family that got into the academy. Seeing that Braun already has a good idea who he is, our boy makes a light joke, suggesting that he might have introduced himself a little late. Braun just groans even more, feeling helpless and ashamed of himself. If he had known who Dane really was, he would never have challenged him. Now, he's paying the price for underestimating him, and it's starting to make a lot more sense why Dane was so confident from the start. As much as he's in pain, he's still very curious as to why a guy as powerful as Dane would be hanging around with someone like Ernest, who he considers an idiot. While he's busy trying to wrap his head around that, Dane interrupts him and asks what he should do now. He reminds Bronn that he was the one who drew his sword and ended up losing, so now, according to the law, Dane should probably take his life since he lost. Of course, this is quite extreme and even Bronn is taken aback by such a drastic conclusion to their fight. He definitely doesn't want to die here, so he asks Dane what the hell he's talking about. In response, our boy explains that this wasn't exactly a fair duel from his perspective. After all, the bully literally drew a real sword with the capacity to kill someone. For that, he should be ready to face the consequences of losing in a real life or death type of situation. Dane makes his point very clear and Bronn begins to tremble in fear because he can tell that the Sagar's boy seriously looks like he wants to kill him. Not wanting things to escalate even further, he immediately surrenders. He gets on his knees and apologizes to our boy, swearing that he never knew he was Dane Sagers. He vows to never do anything this stupid again, hoping that this will get the young master to spare him, but Dane doesn't intend to let him off the hook that easily. Despite his heartfelt apology, our boy just scoffs and suggests that Bronn doesn't even know what he's gotten himself into. He tells the bully that he really does get it and then informs him that he's apologizing to the wrong person. That being said, he points to Ernest, who's standing not too far away, and informs Bronn that the explorer is the one who he should be apologizing to. For a bully of this size and ego, you'd think Bronn would protest and refuse to beg Ernest for mercy. After all, it's a kid that he's been stepping on for years. However, that's not the case because Bronn cares way too much about staying alive than his pride, which is a wise choice in this situation. Without even thinking twice, he falls at Ernest's feet and apologizes for everything he's done to him. The explorer is even taken aback when he sees his greatest nightmare kneeling before him and begging for mercy. He begins to think back to all the things Bronn did to him for many years. This is the person he feared the most, who is now groveling on the ground like a pathetic coward. Just then, Dane tells Ernest that he should finish everything, which leaves him confused. Dane tells him that he can decide if he wants to beat Bronn until he feels better or just accept and move on. The bully desperately begs him with tears running down his face. He tells Ernest that he can hit him as much as he wants till he feels better. In response, Ernest just tells him that he should fight him fair and square next time, claiming that he'll only forgive him after that. Bronn is shocked, but the explorer doesn't say anything else and just walks off. After that, Dane commends him, telling him that he did well, and the little explorer just thanks him before walking away. The story continues back in school, when Dane and Ernest return from their little adventure with Bronn and his bullies. On their way back, Layla spots them and immediately calls Dane out for not meeting up with her like they planned. She claims that she was waiting for him for a long time, but he never showed up, and so she decided to come looking for him. She notices that they look kinda rough, and since she was already worried about him, she immediately asks him if he got into a fight or something. Of course, it wasn't much of a fight since our boy absolutely wiped the floor with Bronn and his goons. Either way, he admits that someone actually picked a fight with him instead, and the pink-haired girl is immediately curious to find out who it was. In response, our green-eyed hero just looks back at Bronn, who's still trembling at the back, instead of actually calling any names. Layla quickly gets the hint, and when she sees how scared the troublemakers are, she just finds it amusing that Bronn chose to mess with Dane Sagers out of all the students in the whole school. The brown-haired troublemaker is stunned when he sees Layla talking to Dane because he probably never imagined that the boy would know such a highly reputable noble. Bronn is dumbfounded when he sees Layla because she's the daughter of the legendary Duke Thermion. Our boy already heard that Bronn is in the same swordsmanship department as Layla, so he asks the girl if she knows him or at least crossed paths with the brat before. In response, Layla reveals that she doesn't know Bronn and admits that she's not really interested in getting to know him either. After all, the guy has already proven to be a douchebag by picking a fight with her best friend, so she definitely won't have anything to do with him now. Moving on from Bronn and his trouble, Layla suddenly notices that there's another unfamiliar face right in front of her. She definitely doesn't know the white-haired nerd that Dane has been walking with, so she asks him who the guy is. At this point, our boy figures that it's the best time to introduce Layla to Ernest Dillon. He informs her that the guy is also a freshman who happens to be in the exploration department. The boy is extremely nervous, as you can imagine, but he manages to pull himself and greets the young lady. He admits that it's a pleasure to finally meet her, but the modest girl immediately assures him that there's no need to refer to her with titles. Layla tells Ernest to just treat her like a friend and not call her lady every time he sees her. Even though it will probably take some getting used to, Ernest agrees to do away with the formalities. Now that they've gotten the pleasantries out of the way, Layla asks Ernest what exactly it is that they learn in the exploration department of the academy. In response, the scrawny kid reveals that they usually deal with stuff like ruins, secret locations, and generally explorations. He's still quite nervous at this time, so our boy deems it fit to help him out. With this in mind, he tells Layla all about how Ernest's family is famous for their expeditions. Upon hearing this, the young lady figures that it would be a good idea to show him the map they got earlier. As far as she's concerned, Ernest might actually know something about the map or even know how to read it. Dane just winks at her when she says this because she's got a point. Ernest, on the other hand, suddenly becomes nervous again because he doesn't know what they're talking about. He starts panicking and asks them what map they're referring to. Seeing how nervous and curious his new friend is, Dane calms the tension down a notch and tells Ernest how they got the treasure map when they joined a club event earlier. Hearing this, the scrawny kid's mind is blown because he actually heard of someone getting a treasure map. He had no idea that it was Dane, so now that he's being told, he's so amazed by the whole thing. The look of nervousness immediately disappears from his face and is replaced with an incredibly excited expression. Ernest's face lights up when he learns that they have the treasure map, and even Layla is surprised by how much his countenance changed in a split second. She claims that he looks like a completely different person all of a sudden, and our boy figures that it's probably due to the fact that Ernest might have some kind of obsession with artifacts. Now that he knows they have the map, he's more than ready to help them out any way he can do. He suggests that they go somewhere quiet first of all. Layla and Dane are probably a little overwhelmed by his enthusiasm, but they also appreciate it, so they follow him. Not long after, they finally show Ernest the map, and the boy admits that it's a really complicated one. Due to the fact that it's a treasure map, he admits that it's difficult to understand at a glance, and rather than showing the entire academy, it seems to point to a specific place that they haven't been able to locate. After staring at the map for a while, Ernest notices something that catches his attention. He observes that there are a lot of strange writings all over the map. Even though he can read it, he admits that this doesn't mean that he can connect them. As such, he begins to wonder if there's some kind of pattern. After a while, they're still not able to get a breakthrough, and Layla begins to wonder what they'll do now at this point. Hearing this, Ernest reveals that he already has a plan. The first step of this plan is to find out who made the map, because there's no standard format for things like this. But by just knowing the creator, then they will actually be able to have a rough idea of what to expect and what exactly to be looking for in the map. Upon hearing all of this, Dane concludes that Ernest is trying to say that decoding the map right away will be too difficult. In response, Ernest simply tells them that the one thing he knows for certain is that the map is within the academy. He knows this because the architectural patterns on the map were only used when the academy was built. As soon as he says this, Dane and Layla get the same idea simultaneously, and then they both suggest that the treasure is somewhere nearby. They're excited about this deduction because it's like the first piece of good news they've gotten regarding the map. Unfortunately, Ernest isn't as excited as they are because he knows that there is still a major problem regarding the whole thing. It turns out that this architectural style uses a secret magic that is unique to Saul Hankston. This alone makes their treasure hunt a little more difficult because Saul Hankston was the Academy's founder and a legendary magician. Layla is blown away when she hears this, while Dane immediately understands where the problem is. Our boy is aware that the magic Saul Hankston used can't be used anymore in this present age because the founder didn't leave behind any disciples. Upon hearing Dane's statement, Ernest is even more impressed with his new friend because our boy seems to know a lot. While Ernest is busy praising our Dane, the reality of the situation dawns on Layla and it upsets her quite a bit. Sure, she expected the treasure hunt to be quite difficult, but not to this extent. At the moment, they're kinda stuck at this point, and even though it's really annoying, Ernest reminds them that the key at the end of the day is figuring out who made the map. If they manage to do this, then that way, they'll be able to find clues to decipher the code and finally interpret the map. This is really exciting for Dane, probably because of how challenging it is, and he can't wait to decide the map so they can all go treasure hunting together. Hearing this, the scrawny kid immediately indicates his interest to join, and Layla can already imagine how fun it's going to be. Before coming to the academy, she only did things with her family, so to be going on a treasure hunt with her new friends is definitely a first for her. Dane can tell that his two closest friends seem really excited about the whole thing, and this makes him glad. Right now, Ernest is all in with them, so he's ready for whatever it takes. He admits that it might take some time to decode the map and suggests that they investigate slowly so they don't make too many mistakes. He offers to look more into it too in his free time and then gives them back the map. Of course, Dane is surprised when the kid hands him the map, so he doesn't take it. Ernest is now part of the team and he's the exploration expert among them, so Dane figures that it would be better for him to keep it and have it with him while deciphering. That's a great idea and all, but Ernest assures them that they don't have to worry because he has already memorized the map. As you can imagine, Dane and Layla are stunned when he says this because it is a very complicated map. They are blown away by him and both wonder how good his memory must be to have been able to do that. In response, the scrawny kid reveals that he always remembers things like codes and maps really well for some reason he still hasn't figured out. Hearing this, Dane concludes that the boy has an incredible talent in certain areas, and Layla is already a little jealous because she knows that must be very useful for tests. Seeing that the kid doesn't need the map anymore, Dane finally agrees to take it off his hands and keep it. He also tells Ernest to let him know if there's anything he can help with. In response, the nerdy explorer thanks Dane for everything. He admits that this is his first time searching for something with someone other than his father, and for this, he's really happy. Layla is equally excited to be doing something like this with her friends, so she suggests that they go eat now so they can celebrate becoming a team. The boys smile when she says this and both agree that it's a good idea. Just like this, the duo becomes a trio and they all make their way to the cafeteria to stuff their bellies after all that brainstorming. Later that night, at the dormitory, our boy retires to his room and recalls everything that happened earlier. Obviously, a lot happened today, but his room is still kind of a mess, so he figures that he should take some time to organize his stuff. He starts with the books lying around and decides to keep the important things his family gave him somewhere visible. With this in mind, he picks up the summon egg his big sister gave him. He holds the massive egg for a while, wondering where he should put it. He remembers people telling him that living beings shouldn't be placed in a subspace, and while he's still pondering on this, the egg begins to vibrate violently, which startles him. The egg doesn't stop shaking, and Dane becomes really worried because he has no idea why this is happening all of a sudden. Something like this hasn't happened with the familiar's egg since the first time about 7 years ago, so he is so confused. Dane wonders if it's happening again because he moved to the academy, but that doesn't seem likely because even though the academy is a mysterious place, the mana distribution here isn't different from what's in his room back home. Since it can't be the reason, Dane suddenly realizes that this could be happening because of the ancient mana that he absorbed in the Misty Garden. This seems to be a more likely reason for why the egg would be acting out around him, and he's really amazed by the whole thing. Dane feels that it's incredible that it triggered the egg's reaction instantly, and now that he knows what's going on, he figures that it's time to put all his energy into what he's been trying for a long time. Dane channels as much mana as he can into the familiar's egg, hoping that today might be the day it finally hatches. He puts so much mana that an incredibly bright light shoots out of his room, and it shines out of the dorms to the point that it can be seen from anywhere in the academy. The entire room is filled with powerful waves of mana and magical energy as Dane concentrates everything he's got into hatching the egg. Right now, he can feel his mana being dressed endlessly. He's been pouring mana into this egg for 7 years already, so he wonders how much more it's going to take to finally hatch the egg. After a while, the enormous surge of mana going into the egg begins to take a toll on his room, and he realizes that he can't do this in here. If he keeps this up, it will only be a matter of time before the whole room collapses. While he's still thinking about this, the egg suddenly begins to react again, and he wonders what he should do now. Now seems like the perfect chance to hatch the egg, but he can't keep up the mana surge since it might destroy the dorm. The scene shifts to Claire's laboratory all of a sudden, and we see that our boy took the egg over there to show his sister what's going on. When she sees the state of the egg, she is amazed by how much it's reacting, and it makes her wonder what the hell the genius boy must have done this time around. In response, Dane simply explains that the egg is still vibrating immensely even though he stopped pouring mana into it a while ago. She doesn't seem to be familiar with this situation, and despite being really unsettled, she still manages to remember that this is probably time for a dormitory roll call. She informs him that skipping roll calls won't be good for him in the long run, but he just smiles cheekily in response and assures her that he already has a way to handle that. Back in the dorms, we see a group of mean-looking seniors walking down the hallway. The guy wearing glasses leads the way, and it's clear that he's like the leader of something. He eventually stops and calls out to all the freshmen in their rooms, introducing himself as Albert, the dormitory council president. That being said, he informs them that he's about to begin the roll call for Dantera Hall. The moment Albert announces this, all the students in the dorm come out of their rooms to make themselves for the roll call. So, you might be wondering why this is such a big deal in this school. Well, it turns out that roll call is for all dormitories in the Imperial Academy and is conducted uniformly and regularly. As such, all students are expected to make themselves available for the roll call. This is why other students are a little worried when they notice Dane and Priscilla haven't come out for it. Arnold even wonders if they know how serious roll call is in the school. Apparently, if one is late for the monthly roll call, they get 1 penalty point, and if you're absent, that's 2 points instead. If you're late more than 3 times in a semester, it's disciplinary actions or service duty that will be meted on the offenders. And if one is absent more than twice, then they get demoted from the dorm. Another student in the dorm claims that he saw Dane cleaning his room earlier, but now that he's not here, they're worried that he might miss roll call. Judging by the angry look on Albert's faces, it's clear that he is not the kind of council president to show mercy or pardon any defaulters. He sternly tells all the students to stay still and keep quiet, claiming that he doesn't want to hear any chattering anymore. This is the 9th floor of Dantera Hall, and even though Albert just got here, he assures the students that they won't get through roll call easily today. He seems to have beef with them or something, and Arnold is pissed when he hears the council president make such a statement. He doesn't get why the guy is so serious today and wonders what he even means by saying that they won't get through easily. Just then, he reveals that there's a newly installed mana surveillance system which captured some interesting footage. At this point, you can see why he's so pissed with the students on the 9th floor. In the surveillance footage, there's footage of the dorm resident Priscilla sneaking out, and they confirm that she went completely off the dorm premises after tracking her. President Albert confirms that all that happened 5 minutes ago, but for some reason, the surveillance system is showing that Priscilla is currently in her room, which doesn't add up at all. As such, Albert is convinced that there's foul play somewhere, so he's determined to investigate and get to the bottom of it. At this point, the other students on the floor begin to panic because they kinda know what's going on already. They feel that they're doomed now that Albert has figured out the trick, but all they can do is hope that by some miracle, Priscilla is actually in her room. Without wasting another second, President Albert barges into Priscilla's room to confirm that she's not in there. A wicked smile creeps up on his face all of a sudden, claiming that they're going to change some rules. Normally, council members aren't supposed to check if the defaulters are in their rooms, but starting today, he figures that it's time for that to change. As soon as he says this, it's like a big blow to the Dantera Hall residents because they know that this means a storm of penalty points is coming their way. Albert inspects Priscilla's room to confirm that she's not in there, and once he's sure about that, he comes back out to the hallway. He admits that the remaining factors besides skipping roll call are generally fine. For instance, the cleanliness in their hall is okay. Anyway, back to the business of the evening. President Albert decides that Priscilla will get 2 penalty points as expected for unexcused absence from the dormitory premises. He tells the others to make sure they announce it and inform her when she gets back. They acknowledge the information, and right after that, Arnold quickly approaches Albert regarding Dane to make an excuse for the white-haired boy. He informs the council president that Dane is a new student, but Albert doesn't seem to care about that. The only thing he is concerned with right now is what reason the boy has for not being visible. At this point, Albert realizes that he really hasn't seen Dane's sagas, so he begins to imagine that the boy must have missed his first roll call ever. The other students try to defend him, stating that there's no way Dane is not in his room even though they're not sure about this. They tell Albert that he seemed really busy organizing things earlier, but of course, the council president would prefer to confirm these claims himself, so he enters Dane's room. To his surprise, he sees the new student standing right there tidying some stuff up just as the other residents said he'd be. He calls out to Dane at this point, shocked that he was in his room all this time, and then asks if he didn't know they were doing the roll call. Just then, our boy turns around, feigning ignorance, and then apologizes for not being out there. He reveals that he was too focused on unpacking and didn't realize what was happening. Surprisingly, Albert lets him off the hook for it. It turns out the council president isn't so heartless after all. He's just really strict, but he also understands that something like this can happen since it's Dane's first day at the academy. After surviving roll call, we catch up with our boy, who is still in Claire's lab. He reveals how he was able to outsmart the council president using a tool called the Illusion Generator MK1. Of course, Claire is familiar with the device because his sister was the one who gave it to Dane. She told Dane that most people won't even notice that it was just an illusion, but she is a little taken aback by his crazy plan, so he explains it to her. He reveals that his image gets projected from the dock connected to the generator, but the yellow-haired lady just tells him that it's too difficult to actually use without getting caught. Since it's remote controlled, the connection can get unstable, and even a slight disruption makes the illusion obvious. Hearing this, Dane tells her that he already expected that something like that would happen, so he made contingencies available. He assures her that he checked the connections several times, and so now, he's certain that there won't be any problem as long as the inspectors don't come too close to the projection. After he reveals his daring plan to her, she's really surprised because she didn't know that he had so much guts. Anyway, that's by the way, because his major concern at the moment is the familiar's egg that still hasn't hatched. He asks her how the egg is, and she confirms that it's definitely still reacting to his mana. At least, that's a good thing because it means that the chances of it hatching soon are pretty high. However, she lets him know not to get his hopes up too much because there are plenty of eggs that react like this and still don't hatch. Even getting this kind of reaction is very rare, so the fact that it happens makes her confident that there's a good chance. After all, it's progress compared to when the egg was just sitting dormant in his room. At this point, Dane is quite confused because he doesn't know what to do next. He asks what they should do now and wonders if he should just keep pouring mana into the egg. Hearing this suggestion, the yellow-haired lady ponders on it for a while, feeling that there's still so much unknown about familiar eggs. That being said, she feels that putting it straight into a mana stabilizer would be too risky. However, she doesn't think that they should just stop here now that the egg is reacting non-stop. She feels that the lab is the best place for the egg to hatch, and since there's already a mana barrier for secrecy in there, it's a no-brainer. Dane agrees with her, stating that the egg might hatch anytime and anywhere if they leave it alone. With all of this in mind, his yellow-haired senior decides that they will put the egg in a mana barrier so they can watch it. She claims that his mana is pure, but still, she would like to install a man filter first just in case. After coming up with this plan, our boy proceeds to pump more means into the egg, even though it's starting to take a toll on him. He pours so much mana, but the egg just keeps sucking it all, which leaves him really baffled because he doesn't get how it is still hungry enough to be absorbing this much. At this point, he's really curious to find out what in the world is even inside that egg because he never came across something that absorbs so much mana before now. His yellow-haired lady is equally intrigued by this familiar egg. Normally, anyone can buy one if they have the money, but hatching the egg always proves to be a different story. The hatching conditions aren't even known, and the only thing most summoners actually know is that the mana of the user must match the mana frequency of the familiar inside the egg, whatever it even is in there. That being established, the truth of the matter is that you basically need a ton of luck too if you want to hatch a familiar egg. Our boy continues to do his best, and she's even starting to get worried because he has been groaning for a while now. She knew he was amazing before, but after seeing it with her own eyes, she's absolutely speechless. All of a sudden, several cracks appear on the egg and Dane gets so excited that he calls out to his sister, asking if she just saw that. She saw the cracks as well, and so now she is convinced that the creature in the egg is about to come out. She suggests that he just needs to keep pouring mana into it for a little longer. By this time, he's already struggling to keep up, but he doesn't give up. Our boy keeps pumping as much as he can, eager to see what kind of creature is even in the egg. All of a sudden, a huge blast of mana rocks the lab due to the fact that Dane finally reached the egg's limit. The egg finally blasts open with an explosion, and right after that, they finally get to see the familiar sitting on the broken shell covered in goo. The winged creature seems to still be asleep, and even though they just made a breakthrough, Claire is more concerned about her brother who took the most hits from the explosion. She rushes to check on him and see if he's okay because he's sitting on the floor like he just passed Doit or something. By the time she gets to him, he assures her that he's fine, claiming that he's just a little dizzy. Since he's fine, he points to the more important thing at the moment, which is the familiar that they finally hatched. Dane points to the creature and Claire turns to check it out for herself as well. He shows her that something actually came out of the egg, and as the remaining smoke clears, they see the baby creature with wings and horns. It looks like some sort of baby wyvern. It doesn't seem as weak as a newborn though, because shortly after hatching, it starts flying all over the lab. The familiar hovers about, and then the Sagar's siblings immediately realize that it must be an actual wyvern. They're not sure at first, but then the creature starts breathing fire and then becomes a little bit more obvious. At first, Dane tries to observe the familiar from afar, but his sister urges him to go meet the creature. She gives him a push, telling him to approach it instead of just standing there like he wasn't the one who pumped it with mana for the last 7 years. Claire reveals that there have been cases where familiars recognize the first person they see as their master. That being said, Dane has to go over to it quickly so it can register him as its owner. After all, it's his familiar. As you can imagine, the young master is a little nervous about going to meet the creature because he's never really had such a close encounter with a wyvern. Regardless, he overcomes the fear and slowly walks over to it. As he closes the space between them, he begins to realize that the familiar is actually kinda cut up close. The baby wyvern looks confused when it sees him coming over, so it gets nervous as well. However, it doesn't run away, and Dane tries to make it comfortable around him too. He gives the familiar a gentle smile and then greets it before stretching out his hand to introduce himself. He tells the wyvern that his name is Dane, which is the first step to registering as its master. The baby wyvern makes a few sounds that our boy probably can't understand, but since it doesn't run away or attack him, Claire concludes that he's already bonded with the familiar. Hearing this, even our boy feels like she's right about it because he also finds the little guy really cute. The familiar flies over to his hand and lands there the way a pet bird would. It makes a bunch of noises that seem friendly, so Claire figures that it's okay to go closer to it now. She tells Dane that he's amazing after seeing this because she can't even imagine how he managed to do it so easily. The baby wyvern is so cute that she also wants to spend some time with it. She tells Dane that she'd like to have a look and see how it is, but just when she takes a closer look at the familiar, she realizes something shocking. Claire expresses the shock and Dane notices it, so he asks her what's wrong. That's when she tells him that this creature on his hand might actually be a summon from beyond the horizon. Our boy is amazed when he hears this because he knows how rare such creatures are. He finds it hard to believe at first though, but his big sister confirms this, and then reveals that only a handful of chosen summoners can do this. Claire is a genius summoner that's highly respected in the academy, but even she can barely summon part of a spirit. And then there's her little brother doing wonders even though he has only spent a few days in the school. She admits that she never thought the youngest would be able to summon something like this, so she tells Dane once again just how huge this is. It's a really big deal, and at this point, the reality of the situation makes him a little nervous. It dawns on him that his familiar is really not an existing summon, so he asks his sister if that's the case. She claims that she knows every summon that can normally be called, even their juvenile forms. However, she doesn't know any summons with traits like this one. The closest would be a wyvern, but it's clearly different in the details now that she's taken a closer look at the infant creature. Hearing this, Dane takes another look at the familiar and suggests that it doesn't look that special physically. As such, he wonders if no one will even know what this thing really is. In response, his big sister simply admits that they will have to figure that out moving forward. They definitely don't know what it is right now, but with time, they'll get answers. The main problem now is that there are no records that mention a similar summon. That being said, Dane assumes that this familiar might actually just be an entirely new being that never existed before. It appears that the baby familiar agrees with him on this one because it suddenly breathes fire, almost like it's trying to tell him something. At this point, our boy can only wonder who something like this would come to him. It's an entirely new creature, but he doesn't get why it had to be his own summon. While pondering on this, he can't help but think back to the Misty Garden where he absorbed the ancient magic. It's starting to look like a lot of weird stuff has been happening ever since that incident, so he can't be entirely sure that these new events aren't connected in any way. He's drawn out of his thoughts suddenly when Claire tells him to keep the broken pieces of the eggshell safe. She claims that some species that hatch from eggs eat the shell for nutrients, so he takes the advice. Now that they've finally hatched the familiar, our boy isn't exactly sure what the next step is. Should he show the creature to the world? Should he keep it hidden in his room at all times? How is he supposed to cater for the creature when they know nothing about it? He's not sure what happens from here, so his sister tells him to approach with caution first. At least for the meantime. Claire advises him to try to record everything regarding the creature constantly. Stuff like what it likes and what it doesn't like, how long it sleeps, and whether it shows aggression. His big sister also tells him to observe stuff like how much it grows and how quickly each day. Basically, he has to keep an eye of the familiar at all times, and after realizing this, he admits that it's a lot of work, especially for someone who still needs to attend all his classes as an independent major student. His schedule is about to get tighter than it already is, and just thinking about this puts him under a lot of pressure. He stares at the familiar, probably foreseeing his new life, but even though it's going to be extremely stressful, he feels that it's worth it. Right now, Dane doesn't know exactly what it is about the familiar, but he is already starting to feel like he needs to protect this little one. After all, it's the baby that he's been nurturing for almost a decade now. Before he leaves the lab, Claire asks him if he's planning to keep the summon with him. She knows that people might freak out if they see him with an unknown creature like that, so she suggests that he leaves it in her laboratory, which is safe and private. In response, Dane simply assures her that everything will be fine. Obviously, he intends to keep the creature hidden from other students, but even if he gets caught, he still has his sisters and he's sure that they'll have his back when the time comes. Besides, he believes that the familiar will feel trapped if it's stuck in the lab all the time. Hearing this, Claire admits that he's made a fair point, but since he wants to take it out and be completely responsible for it, she suggests that they use this chance to get him officially registered with a mark. Our boy is taken aback when he hears this, but then he quickly realizes that she's probably talking about a summoner's mark. She confirms this and explains that even though he's still a beginner, his talent is clear. Claire also knows that it will be tough juggling everything all by himself. However, now that he has a summon, this is his chance to get registered early. As you can imagine, it's a really tempting offer, and our boy ponders on it for a second before agreeing to do it because it sounds about right. After hearing that he's on board, his sister asks to confirm if he indeed signed up for the summoning course. He did, and since orientation is the following day, she has something in mind. She figures that the professor in charge of that will be Tamarix Piano, and she's familiar with the teacher, so she thinks that the conditions are perfect for her brother. Claire explains that people will definitely start talking about special admission for him if he is able to show his talent in class. Dane tries to protest, but before he can get a word in, Claire admits that she knows it's not going to be easy. Normally, it's hard to even meet the requirements, but she knows that her brother is different. He's special, so she's confident that he'll smash it. Of course, the department will need to approve it, but she's sure that he will qualify and get in through special admissions. All this talk about special admissions is probably sounding pretty intriguing to our boy, and he's not completely against it. Even the familiar on his shoulder seems interested in the topic, which Dane notices. He doesn't mind trying out what Claire just told him, but for now, he needs to come up with a name for the little guy that just hatched. Back in the dorm, the other Dantera residents start asking him where he was. They notice that he wasn't in his room after the roll call, and since he doesn't need them finding out about his familiar just yet, he tells them that he had to take care of something real quick afterwards. The purple-haired one especially is particularly curious about how Dane even managed to be there for the roll call. He left and nobody knew on time, but Priscilla got caught straight away, so it's really baffling. Our boy is already tired of all the questions, so he vaguely tells the nosy student that there is always a way, which isn't too surprising since they've all come to learn that the Saugers family is full of surprises. This statement gets Dane's attention, so he asks if his sisters were just as unpredictable as he is. In response, the purple-haired guy tells him that his sisters were totally like that too. They're literally legends of Dantera Hall, and they have such a reputation that Dane will be told the same thing if he asks any dorm students about his big sisters later. Hearing this, our boy doesn't even know if he should take that statement as a compliment or an insult. Anyway, after the little interrogation, the guy reveals that he's the only one who knows that Dane went out of the dorm and tells him that he has nothing to worry about. Our boy just thanks him for his secrecy, and that's where the chat ends. It turns out that the familiar was on Dane's body all this time, but the other student didn't notice it. It's only after the guy leaves that the creature pokes its head out to come out of hiding. Once our boy makes it back into his room, he flops down on his bed, glad that they got through that safely without getting caught. He wonders what Priscilla was thinking walking out of the dorms like that when there are surveillance systems. Just then, the little guy starts flying all over the room, and our boy figures that she must have been way too excited. Well, she's not the only one, because his familiar is currently going crazy in his room, breathing fire and flapping its wings non-stop. He watches the little guy mess around, and all he can think about is how amazing it is. Later, he shows the familiar the secret passage that his sister told him about. Right now, the entrance is closed, so this is the only way back out to the lab. He tries to pass but receives an error message from the dorm council, denying him access and threatening to punish him with penalty points for violations. Seeing this, he realizes that the council wrapped the entire dorm in a mana barrier, so he's really confused right now because he has no idea how he's supposed to break through that. Even though it looks like a dead end, he's determined to find a way through, so he starts by trying to send the mana flow so he can find a weak point in the barrier. While he's carefully trying to find it, the little familiar shoots fire at the barrier, which immediately creates an exit point for them. Our boy is stunned when he sees this because he can't even comprehend how the little guy was able to do that. The creature simply flies, so our boy realizes that it must have used fire that nullifies mana temporarily. He's amazed by this incredible ability and realizes that this is really an extraordinary summon he's acquired. The next day, Dane tells Ernest about the familiar and how he named it Happy of all things. Just like most people would be, Ernest is disappointed because he doesn't even understand why he would name something like that. In his defense, Dane claims that he did so because he felt that the creature was friendly and easy to call. Since Ernest doesn't like it, he tells the scrawny kid to come up with a name instead. He's surprised to be given the task, but he starts thinking immediately. Sure, the creature is cute, but Ernest feels that the name should have a little more weight. Dane can probably see the gears turning in the explorer's head because he's thinking so hard. He's surprised that Ernest is taking it so seriously, but then all of a sudden, the explorer comes up with a name, Karnas. He asks Dane what he thinks about the name, and our boy simply asks him what Karnas means. So, Ernest reveals that the name means mystery and suggests that it's a pretty fitting name since they don't know anything about the familiar. Hearing this, our boy agrees that it's the perfect name, and as soon as he tells Karnas his new name, the little guy is equally excited. Alright, that wraps up this episode with all the new chapters covered. As always, if you've enjoyed this story, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new to the channel, definitely consider subscribing to stay notified for all the future uploads. Until next time.